obviously, if you go on Nathan's show, you get loads of shouting over each other. You get loads of, you know, it turns into a shit show. You know what I mean? And some of the other channels, you get that kind of thing. And we've just got one rule, and like the rule is literally like just to let the other person finish speaking, and then you will get. I mean, I did a debate with Travis, the Plain Truth, on Sunday, and he can't do that, so we had to have 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, and practically would like mute us so we get equal time. But we guarantee you equal time in anything you want to say. We've just got to let each other finish. That's all we do.
Yeah, no worries. That's perfect for me. I just treat people how they treat me. So, you know, if that's the respect I get, the respect you get also.
Yeah, well, cool.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you, but obviously disagree. But I'll let you finish everything you want to say.
No funny,
and then,
no fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm interested because we did say exactly. We did say we were going to give you a very short interview first, didn't we? Rather than like an open.
Yeah, that'd be good.
It's an interesting story, like, because I've spoken to a few people who've gone like from Flat Earth back, but never someone who's done what you've done. So yeah, interesting.
Got a lot to share.
Cool. Did you got the hot mic? Apparently, can people hear me? Yeah, people can hear us. So people can hear me. Apparently, yeah. No, people can hear me. I don't know. PowerPoint here, Creaky.
But Tommy Hench is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, hey, not.
You did mute yourself on first, didn't you? Yeah, that's what professionals do. Professionals make mistakes.
I tell you what, Tom, you can tell I do a lot of this, can't you? You can hear me now, everyone can you? Well, I'm not saying all that again because I can't be asked, but just imagine it was really funny and you were all on the edge of your seats. But anyway, we're joined tonight by Tommy.
It was witty.
Yes, it was my usual standard. So I can feel myself getting rather warm, so I'm going to hand you straight over to Catz and he will get things going in the proper manner.
Hey, check this out. You called me. I didn't realise I was on my Baldy Catz. I thought I was on my Conspiracy Catz account. But just for those people who think I am, but check this out, Creaky, right? Proper hair. What do you think?
Phil Collins, Jason Statham.
Look at that. Proper hair. Can I see?
I miss hair. I miss hair.
It is a yeah. So it's a deliberate start. Thing is, I was just trying to copy you as a deliberate thing. Right. So I'm looking forward to this because I don't really know what to expect. I got a message from someone on Discord, and I won't name them unless I know they're in the chat. So if you want to say it's you can say it's you, but I won't name you otherwise. Saying there's somebody that will make a real good conversation for you on Gen Panda's Discord. So I reached out to Brooomie, and here we are. But like, I don't know masses about what's happened lately. So we're going to interview you really for the first 10 minutes. Is that okay, Tommy? Brooomie.
It'd be better if we give him a background story anyway. Yeah, definitely. That's fine.
Right, cool. Because, and what I might say, if you've got any questions in the chat as well that you want to ask him, that come to mind when we're having this chat, put them in there. Because you are somebody who has gone the other way from people I've interviewed. Like you're not an ex-flat earther. You've gone the other way, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm 80-20 at the moment to the flat earth side. So obviously it's difficult to let go of the last few hooks and hinges that obviously what I now look at as probably social conditioning and a religion rather than the truth.
So you're not 100% there though. You're still in that making your mind up.
It's difficult to let go of that last 20%. Yeah, it's just difficult because there's things that contradict the globe model, and that steered me away from believing the globe. And so letting go of that last 20%, it's like letting go of that last bit. So I'm still in early transition. It's only like last week that I've made this kind of jump. So to go completely, it's definitely flat. It's definitely 100% categorically is I'm in transition at the moment. So it's only been about a week or so.
Right. So it's still raw, still there. So what I'm not going to do is ask you to present any evidence or something in the interview, because obviously for those who've clicked on for a debate, we are going to be having a debate. So save your evidence for the debate. But you started off, I think you said you started off debating against flat earthers, didn't you?
Yeah, because basically about 5 years ago, I showed my mate some YouTube videos about flat earth, and he became a flat earther. And I was like, how the hell can you fucking think the earth's flat? You're absolutely stupid. Rah. And we fell out. We argued day in, day out. He was one of my best friends. And then I got into chats with people on Facebook. And then I got introduced to Nathan Oakley show. And I went on there, and obviously Nathan screamed and shouted at me as he does. And I reviewed the debate with him, and I've been involved in it ever since. I conceded that Nathan had a possible good explanation for boats going over the horizon, an alternative, and basically then I got invited to Gen Panda server. I went into Gen Panda server about 3 years ago, and we spoke, and then basically they told me how it was incorrect and corrected me on all the things that possibly were a possibility. I wasn't a flat earther, but I did consider the fact that they may have a point. And then basically I've been hanging out with them guys for about 3 years, and I've just heard all the arguments, and I've been arguing against flat earthers and trying to help them see things my way. But obviously after 3 years of talking to them all, you pick up little bits of each person of why they believe what they believe, or why they know it to be flat, etc. And obviously recently these arguments are coming to the surface through finally after 3 years of being against it. I finally started to kind of get what they're saying, and I've seen a different side to the flat earthers, and I think that they are looked upon as stupid, uneducated, or misunderstood or construed individuals. But that's not the case for me now. Now I feel like these are people that are seeing objective truth, and there isn't no actual proof to prove them ultimately on the contrary, if that's the right word. So
okay, sorry, go on. No.
That'll do. If you got something to add.
Well, like, I'm sorry, Creaky, I'm hogging the questions here, but like, feel free.
No. You carry on.
But just because if you're making that jump now, what I often think is if you believe that the Earth is flat, then you have to believe in so many other conspiracies. So if I was to ask you, obviously, about the moon landing, what would your kind of response to that be?
It looks odd to me, the moon landing, but it should look odd. It's expected to look odd because it's something that I should never have seen in my normal experience in life. So when I see that the astronauts walking around and driving the rover and stuff, I think, that looks a bit odd. But the fact that it looked odd makes it kind of confirms that it's possible that they actually did it, because it shouldn't look normal. It should look odd, if that makes sense. So the gravitational on the moon and the way that they move and stuff, and the way the flag kind of moves a bit, like, it is a bit sketchy. But the fact that it looks a bit sketchy is kind of evidence that it should be, because it should be abnormal. It should be alien for me, because it is an alien environment.
Yeah, with different gravity, etc. Yeah, I agree. It should look a little bit. A big shout out to Debate Flat Earth and More is in the chat, by the way. And if you're not on that server, I'll just give it a quick advert. And the YouTube channel, I believe he's just hit 1,000 subscribers as well. So I do enjoy that channel. So go on then. Can you marry the two together? Can you then say, if you're not 100% convinced that the moon landing was fake, when it doesn't sound like you're 100%, then can you exist in a reality where you think, like, the moon landing could be real, but the Earth could be flat? Can you marry the two together?
Well, no, I couldn't marry the two together. Then it would be evidence to suggest that there is some sort of cover up. So, if the Earth would be, the only way I'm ever going to know if the Earth's flat or round is actually going into space and see it for myself, which I'm never going to be able to confirm that. So if, obviously I'm in my transition and more stuff that I'll learn, I then, can commit to that 100%, then obviously the moon landing would have to be thrown out. Yeah, absolutely. It couldn't be hand in hand. I don't think you could have a reality of flat Earth and a moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're of the opinion then that if you can't see it with your own eyes, then you won't believe it? Is that kind of where you are right now?
Well, seeing is believing, isn't it? Like, I've traveled around the world a few times. I've never ever seen any a curvature. Everywhere's always presented itself as flat and motionless, and that's one of the main arguments for flat earthers. That's something we can all agree on. And people that say they've seen curvature, I'm confused how they can see it, because that's not what I see as an individual. And I feel like the consensus tell you that it's curved. And when you think about how group opinions influence people, it's like peer pressure. So I feel like there's a lot of peer pressure for me to say there's curvature when there isn't. So for me to say I don't see any, it seems to be a smack in the face to the majority of people, which shouldn't be the case when we're objectifying proof.
But wouldn't that apply to being involved in the flat Earth community as well? Don't you now feel obliged to agree with the people you're hanging out with and have started to like?
I've always agreed with that point anyway. I've never, even when I was arguing with flat earthers, one of my main central points with them was, yeah, it does look flat and motionless, but that don't mean it is. That was kind of one of my arguments that I used to use frequently, because we can agree that something may appear one way, but doesn't categorically mean it is the way it appears.
Yeah.
So have you always been sort of like conspiracy minded though? When you come into this other, and I'll not rattle them all off, but do you get quite into just conspiracies in general?
I tend to. I know what the news can do. I know the news is. I've been on the news, and they interviewed me. They asked me about what did they ask me about? A prime minister, and I give my opinion on what this prime minister was like and what he did. And I give a very negative first reaction, which was, oh, this guy is obviously just pulling a hoax, blah, blah, blah. But I can see what he's attempting to do to appeal to people on a council estate sort of level, because he'd done like a video on a council estate. And I put in that I see it's a very productive thing that he's doing, because he's trying to relate to the common folk. But they cut out all the context of the positives that I was talking about him, and just aired all my negative comments. So myself personally, I've seen the news and what they can do with manipulating people and persuading people with a false view. So my trust in the news isn't high at all. So you could say the things that are on the news, yes, I always look a bit deeper. I don't just take it on face value.
There's certainly been, to me, I think there's certainly value in looking at, I can put it, the editing and the spin some media outlets put on stories. I think, is it Avi Yamini at the minute who's in a court battle with Jim Jeffries? I think Jim Jeffries interviewed him and then took the answers he gave to one question and played them as if they were answers to different questions. and completely took everything he did out of content. But I think Aviyamini, I think I pronounced that right, he recorded the whole thing in secret on a camera phone and sort of exposed it. So, you know, I kind of get what you're saying, but we'll get into that in the debate, whether that's evidence, you know, for or against anything or not. But it's interesting to you say that. So who would you say you're, like, the flat earther that's had most influence on you is?
Myself. Influence on me.
In terms of you know, making you make the turnaround that you've done.
I think
the person who's like maybe dripped
I listened to a lot of them, but I think the ones that obviously the ones that stand out most are obviously Quantum Eraser, Nathan Oakley, you know, Sleeping Warrior, and you know these are the kind of main guys that are basically ridiculed for being complete idiots, basically, but they're not. But obviously their debating tactics could do some fixing when we talk with some of the people. Obviously, we know who they are, but influence. I mean, I speak to every flat earther, and I think every individual I've learned from. But I'd probably say these guys are probably doing the most work for flat earth.
Okay, I mean, like, we obviously have different opinions on everything, but we're here to talk. When we get into the debate, it will be not about personalities, but it will be about the you know, the flat earth itself. I'm just scanning the chat because, like, now will be, if you've got any questions about Brooomie and his, like, conversion, his change, if you want, if you just tag me, or I'm on the Conspiracy Cats account, or if you tag Agree to Disagree and Creaky is on that, we'll spot it. Have you seen any Creaky? Anything from Brooomie?
No, I'm watching the side chat, and the one thing I will say is, obviously Brooomie is staying within the spirit of the channel. You know, he's having a chat with us. So if I could just ask people from either side of the argument to do the same in the side chat as well. You know, this isn't Nathan Oakley's channel. There's going to be no screaming or shouting, and that applies to the side chat just as much as the debate itself. So just bear that in mind, please, guys.
I think my dad's in there. It's him causing all the... No, I'm kidding. So, right, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. What was I saying?
I finished off where I was with the story with Ten Pandas. Well, yeah, I've been debating with them for a long time and alongside them against a lot of flat earthers. And it come to the point where I'd ask myself, this is how it pretty much started. I was speaking with a guy called Scott, and I asked him a question like, oh, you know, the sun and the moon being the same size is a bit weird. Don't you agree? And he just flat out denied that it wasn't. And that was odd to me because, you know, like when you speak to a flat earther and you say, does it, you know, we can agree it's flat and motionless. They can go, yeah. But when I say that to a glober, it's like an attack. And he took it like, no, you know, they're not the same size though. You can do trigonometry and you can do this. You can do, and I was thinking, that's a bit of an overreaction. For something that we can agree on, they do look the same size in the sky. And it's reasonable to assume that it's a bit of a coincidence that one's 400 miles, 400 times further and 400 times bigger. And I know that the moon varies, and I know all the counter arguments to it, but it's still something that I can agree is an objectified, you know, an evident truth. And that became probably the start to me questioning things. And it's basically my relationship with the globe has always been, I've never had a reason to doubt the globe. I've never really had a reason to go against it or think that maybe all these conspiracies are true. And, you know, but I feel that was a kind of start of unraveling that when you find out someone's lying to you, then start questioning everything. And that was kind of the start for me. And now, obviously, I'm told that mass attracts mass, and you know, curvature is here, and so I started to actually really for once actually really listen to the flat earthers, because a lot of the time I was only pretending to hear so I could respond with trying to correct them, to actually teach them that, oh no, it is actually a globe. Oh no, you've got this wrong. Because that's all I used to do when I used to debate them, was never really try to understand their position. I just tried to ridicule them for not understanding how they've got it wrong. But that's the problem when you've got two opposing sides. They both only do that, and they don't listen to each other. So, not saying flat earthers are not guilty of it also, but I am saying that realistically, have I actually been listening? Have I unlearned everything I've learned and actually tried to understand the other person? And that's what I did.
Okay. We've got a question in the chat from Zenon244, just asking, have you ever actually been to an observatory so you can see all the details of the moon and the planets in the sky? Have you ever done that?
I haven't done that.
So that was from Zenon244. Have you spotted anything else, Creaky?
No, I was just going to say though, because I'm going to assume that we're going to put up a community post for people to submit questions for you and Broomy. So I'm going to do that now, so that it's there then, ready for when we kick off the debate.
Well, I think like we've had a nice chilled introduction, haven't we? And like normally, what we do when we do the debates, someone will have like a 10-minute start. Like I'll have a 10-minute opener, you'll have a 10-minute opener, and then we'll discuss it. But I know I said on email that we'd forgo that and we'd just do like a chat, you know, and see what your story was.
I'm ready,
quite
mate.
Interesting. Well, I'll leave it to you how you want to start. If you want to make an opening statement, an opening speech, whatever, you do it, and then I'll make one that is however long you take. I'll do the same. Or if you just want to get into the discussion, it's up to you.
Okay.
All I'll do is just repeat what I said before.
Well, obviously, I knew I was going to talk with you, and I thought I'd do a bit of homework. I'll get something scientific, something quite, with a bit of research as well. This is the only bit of research that I've done because I thought this point would be probably the only point that would be worth addressing. I mean, I can talk about curvature and other things like that, but this is what I've done some sort of homework on, so to speak. And the main thing, obviously, is atmosphere without, obviously, the violation of the second law of thermodynamics by having a low pressure system that isn't escaping through entropy into the vacuum of space, and that seems to be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, and that's one thing that really doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, first of all, just because I've had this debate before where flat earthers have come to brought, for example, the second law of thermodynamics, just so we're all on the same page. What is your understanding of the second law of thermodynamics? What is the second law of thermodynamics to you?
Well, I could read out the actual the definition, but my understanding of it is that anything hot will always go to cold, and anything any pressurized air would always escape to the low pressure.
So if we take now, all right, I'm not going to bash you for a poor understanding of the second law of thermodynamics. I think I did that enough with Nathan Thompson. But let's take that second point you've said. Okay. Right, I think we both agree on the following. If I have a box, okay, and I put maybe 2 atmospheres of pressure in that box, and it's a sealed box, okay, and I've got it on the table in front of me, when I take the lid off that box, what will happen to the air inside that box?
Well, the air would rush out into the pressured air that's inside it would go out to the low pressure.
And would that go with your second law of thermodynamics?
Yeah, it's like entropy, isn't it? That's entropy, so it would escape into the air.
So the thing that flat earthers get confused on in this point is we are trying to take how the atmosphere will behave at a very local level, like that box on our table, with how the atmosphere behaves on a grander scale, on a larger scale, because obviously there's only one, we've got one atmosphere of pressure there, for example. Or even if I said the box had 1.5 atmospheres of pressure, and then you took the lid off, the same thing would apply, it would rush out. But in reality, when we look at the top of Mount Everest and we look at down here, the pressure difference is considerable and there's no equalization, there's no barrier. So how does that fit in with your understanding of the second law of thermodynamics? Because the second law of thermodynamics actually applies to both situations.
Yeah.
So how does the density gradient, the pressure gradient, apply to your understanding of the second law of thermodynamics?
Well, first of all, we're skipping the point that we shouldn't have a pressured system in the first place. But the reason I think we have a pressure gradient in a contained environment is obviously, if you must know about the geochemical cycle, with like how the sun excites air particles and, how it excites and makes them go up into the air and, like create steam. And that's how we get like rain and that cycle that we have.
Sorry, just say that again.
The reason that I think that we have a pressure gradient system in a container is the biogeochemical cycle. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
That's basically how I think. Because all gases are created at the ground level. Oxygen and all that all creates on the ground. And obviously, when the sun comes up, it heats up the air molecules and creates steam. And then that's how we get things go up into the cloud and they go back into the mountains. And it's like a cycle. So that's in a contained system. That's how we can have a gradient.
So your model there, you're talking about gases rising because the ground is warm, aren't you? But in reality, the denser gases are at the ground. not higher.
Yeah, because they're produced at the ground, aren't they? Like plants and all that all produce like the oxygen, and all gases are created at ground level. And the reason they don't escape is because it's contained. But the question that we're skipping is that how do we have a gas pressure in the first place without a container? That's the main thing.
We'll definitely get to that. Can that be the very next point we come to? And
Yeah.
I definitely will not dodge that. We'll definitely come to that. But just going back to why is there no equalization of, you saying that the reason there's no equalization of pressure between here and the top of Mount Everest is because of things like respiration and photosynthesis producing carbon dioxide. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, pretty much like the cycle, isn't it? Like how rain happens, and it also when every time the sun comes up, that produces heat, which heats up the molecules. They get excited, they go up into the atmosphere. You know, you get things like steam; they'll go into the clouds. They condensate, whatever, then they rain down, and you get this kind of cycle. And that basically is all at ground level where our gases are made. So that's why it's thicker at the bottom. And in a container, that makes sense. That when these gas molecules try to escape, they don't escape because there's something containing them. Otherwise, they'd go straight out into space if there's a vacuum.
Right, and you think that's an explanation for the second law of that links in with your understanding of the second law of thermodynamics?
That's right. Yeah, it makes sense to me because it's contained.
So obviously we get gases produced, at ground level. Of course we do. We get lots of gases produced at ground level. We get gases used at ground level. We get carbon dioxide fixed from the atmosphere as it goes into the seawater and becomes carbonates, as it goes into plants and becomes glucose. We get oxygen fixed in our bodies when we breathe it in. Are you suggesting that there is an immense? I mean, for your argument, and there are quite a considerable number of flaws in it that we'll get to, but are you suggesting that the production of gases totally outweighs the way gases are absorbed using photosynthesis, dissolving in the ocean, respiration? Are you saying it totally outweighs that? And if so, which gases are being produced that are, like, where is the extra oxygen being produced to outweigh respiration, for example? The extra carbon dioxide?
I can't give you the full explanation of literally every compound and everything because I'm not an uneducated man. That's very true. But the way that it makes sense to me that that cycle, would keep things more pressure at the base, and that's basically what you're saying to me though is why isn't it equal pressure everywhere if it's contained? And I'm giving you a reason why I think that's adequate because when it goes nighttime, all them gas particles settle and they go back down to the ground, but they only get excited when the sun comes back up and then that starts the cycle again. So realistically, there is a reason why, if it's contained, that things would settle. But we're still getting away from that point of having a gas pressure in the first place without a container, and that's the main thing because we can't.
And I'm not going to skip that. We will definitely get to that.
Sorry.
No, go on.
People have said to me that you can definitely have a gradient in a container. A gradient in a container has been proven by there's like a centrifugal force tanks as well. So we can demonstrate that you can have gas pressure gradients in a container, but we haven't got no actual demonstrations or experiments to prove gas pressure without a container, and that's the problem. So that's what these people have brought. Sorry.
No, you're right. I think if we flip back to what you said at the beginning when we were talking, and you were saying you were trying to explain to the flat earthers why they were wrong, etc. And I think if you're trying to explain to me how we get this gas pressure gradient, or you're talking about the generation of gas, you seem to be lacking an incredible amount of detail in your argument, and it sounds extremely ad hoc. If that makes sense. If we talk about the second law of thermodynamics, we can look at the Boltzmann equation, for example, and what we understand about gases and energy is that perfectly predicts this pressure gradient that we've got all the way up through to the vacuum of space. And we can look, for example, at a given temperature and a given altitude, and we can predict what the concentration of certain gases should be at those heights, all using sort of like the Boltzmann distribution, which is really a big part of the second law of thermodynamics. So I'm just wondering, what is your experience with the Boltzmann distribution, and why is that not good enough?
The Boltzmann distribution is actually a calculation, and a calculation isn't a cause. So you're basically saying with the Boltzmann thing that what's the one? You're basically by guessing someone's height and size, you're trying to guess a particular feature on that person. So it's an actual calculation, but it's actually not. It's just kind of like a guess, if you like.
Well, no, the Boltzmann calculation, the Boltzmann law, is part of the second law of thermodynamics, which flat earthers use. Now, the second law of thermodynamics itself is a statistical probability. It's not a certainty, but the statistical probability is so high that it is what we see virtually all the time. And the Boltzmann distribution is part of that second law of thermodynamics. So if we're going to stick with second law of thermodynamics, once we actually understand second law of thermodynamics and we trust it, we have to trust the Boltzmann distribution because that is part of it. Now, when you say it's a calculation, if a calculation allows you to make accurate predictions, then that calculation, there's something clearly behind that calculation, isn't there? There's something clearly behind it. So what I'm saying is we do understand the second law of thermodynamics, and the second law of thermodynamics predicts exactly what we see, and it makes these predictions that we can measure and these predictions that are bob on correct. Now, it seems to me that the argument you've got, or you've picked up from your Sleeping Warriors, your Nathan Oakley's, is, I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit. It seems to me that your argument is maybe if some gases are given off, maybe that might account for a pressure distribution. Maybe, I don't know really, and maybe in a container somewhere there might be a concentration. Like, you see what I mean? It seems like there's not a lot of substance behind it.
I can hear what you're saying, but the fact is you do concede it's a calculation, and a calculation isn't cause. So you can't really say this is the cause because you've calculated something. In effect, a calculation is still an estimation, I guess. So it's not really any proof of anything. So you can't really incite that. I know it may be part of it, and maybe have not a fully in-depth understanding of things. But this is part of the reason why so many people across the world are being tricked, because not every person could be an expert in every single field. So it makes logical sense to me that these things are going to be gaps in knowledge that allows this to be possible. So it makes more sense to me that no one could be an expert in every single field, and therefore there's people all across the world and experts in their particular field, and they can all miss these particular details. But it is ultimately, by definition, a calculation.
When you say a calculation isn't a cause, you say that like it somehow debunks the fact that we can make accurate predictions with it. What do you mean by the word cause in that sentence? Because I've heard Sleeping Warriors say that a lot, and I'd hate to think you were just mind quoting from Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warriors, just quoting what they say, because he says that a lot. What do you mean by the word cause when you say a calculation isn't a cause in reference to the Boltzmann distribution?
What we've got away from is how you've got gas pressure in the first place. And you did say you were going to go back to that. And what we're doing, we're just going further and further. I understand there's a vague understanding. Let me finish. I understand there's a vague understanding on certain things. I've already conceded that I may not have a vast understanding of all these things, but it doesn't mean like that's wrong. These are the arguments that are being brought up and disregarded just because they're coming from flat earthers, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a point. You know what I mean? And obviously, when I say a cause, it's basically you're saying, well, that's the atmosphere is causing that. That's basically what you're saying. It's like you're saying that it's all sticking to the globe. How is it even contained in the first place? This is what I don't know how to explain how the globe works because I can't explain how the globe works because it doesn't make sense to me. That's why that's why this stuff seems to make more sense. We can have a pressure gradient in a container. We don't have to make any assumptions or calculations. And we can demonstrate what is proven. But what you're saying is, we can calculate it. Therefore, it is, and you don't really have a fast understanding. Therefore, you can't say this.
So, under what circumstances? Under what highly specific circumstances are you able to create a pressure gradient inside a container?
Well, we still yet haven't addressed, pressure without a container. We're still on these things. So I would like to dive into that.
That's the trick of, but that's sort of the trick of like Nathan Oakley's kind of show. And you watch that kind of stuff where he'll make a point and it's the wrong point. It needs diving into, but then, he's got his mute button and he'll mute people from digging down. And I think we are going to get to, and I promise you before we leave this show, and if I don't get to it, you can take the clip and you can put me out as a liar all over the internet. Yeah. I will answer the question about gas pressure without container. I can guarantee it. But let's not skip over stuff. You've mentioned you think it's something. You've admitted yourself that you don't really have a proper explanation for it. It's not something you understand, but it might be something other to do with what the normal model is. You've not been able to pin it down, but you think it might be something different to what we think. But you have said that we do get pressure gradients in a container. So what I'm asking is, under what highly specific conditions do we get a pressure gradient in a container?
Gas centrifuge. If you Google that, you can get a gas centrifuge, and it shows you a.
And what's a gas centrifuge?
It's a gas centrifuge is a device that performs isotope separations of gases. So basically, like, it does these rotations so it puts in rotations, and it shows you without gravity you can have a contained gas with a pressure gradient. So we can demonstrate that.
So a centrifuge is a machine that spins around and it causes, that kind of pseudo centrifugal force that throws things out. It's a machine that's got to spin under, but obviously as a flat earther, you're going to say that the earth isn't spinning. So are you now a flat earther that thinks the earth is spinning? And can I also just say that if it was spinning, the highest density, the highest concentration will be furthest out. So if there's some kind of spinning that's causing an atmospheric gradient here, the biggest concentration, the biggest density would actually be up there, not down here. So how do you marry those two together? Because you've used an analogy of like a centrifuge machine, which doesn't work.
Which is the same thing that I say to flat earthers when they say, well, when you get a bucket and it's an open bucket and you swing it around your head, therefore you're creating centrifugal force at the bottom of the bucket's opened, and therefore that explains how we can have gas pressure without a container. That's the counter argument that I've been hearing for a long time. So for you to turn around and say centrifugal force and having a contained gas with a gas gradient seems a bit hypocritical.
Well, it's not hypocritical because I haven't made any of those arguments to you. I would, it's not me that. No, exactly. I haven't. What I am saying is, if you have something spinning, you're invoking a centrifugal force. That force is equal to the mass times the square of the velocity over the radius, and that throws things outwards. Yeah. And if you had that bucket and you were spinning it around, what you'd find is that the highest pressure in that bucket would always be where the water touches at the bottom of the bucket. It'd be like, so when it was above your head, because it's being thrown out, then you'd have the highest pressure. So maybe this is the issue. Maybe that you've been hearing these counter arguments from people that you don't think make sense, and you've just been listening to people who've been saying it wrong. I mean, what you've said about the spinning and the centrifuge doesn't work, because we would have the highest density above the earth, and the earth would have to be spinning. And as a flat earther, you think how do you not conflate the two? How can the earth be spinning and be fixed and stationary?
That was just a demonstration. I don't want to invoke the centrifugal force, but if you're saying that spinning is part of that experiment, and that's why we have to accolade it to the world, then fair enough. But my actual gas pressure gradient was because of the let me find this now. It's called the biogeochemical cycle. That's my reason for a gradient. But we can actually do other stuff to demonstrate that. Maybe it has got centrifugal force in there. So, I'll concede that point that it may not comport to the flat Earth stationary plane. But the reason for a gas pressure gradient is the biogeochemical cycle. That's the reason we have a gradient, because of the sun coming up, exciting particles, etc.
So the claim is that the air closer to the ground is denser because of those gases being produced. Well, the predominant gases that are produced on Earth at the minute, what would you say they are? I mean, I would say, for example, someone's in the chat said I'm trying to pull off the Mark Sargent look. I'd take offense to that. I've got a couple. If that's causing a gradient, then surely we should find predominantly the gases that are more common lower down next to the Earth would be the ones who are being produced at the Earth. For example, your carbon dioxides, etc., through respiration and decomposition and seismic activity, etc. But actually, the most common and most abundant gas we find down here is nitrogen at 78%. So where is all that nitrogen being produced to make the atmosphere down here denser?
Well, let's concede that I don't have the full knowledge, but that does not mean the people that are bringing your attention to these things are inaccurate. I mean, I guess that's a conversation for another time. I'll do some more research and I'll come back to you with better answers.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, no, and that's what it's about. At the end of the day, like I said at the beginning when we were off air, and I think people caught it, we're not here to scream and shout over each other and show each other up. But I think that's a fair assessment that the argument, and you might be saying to me the same to me later on, but I think that argument you've brought doesn't have an explanation behind it, so it can't really be used as an argument other than maybe like philosophy. You might say, well, wouldn't it be interesting if it was this? I think it could be that, but there's no substance to it that, that actually, well, there's just no substance to it. But I will go on to your question now. Now that's, well, go on. What would you,
now I'm looking forward to the question. I'm looking forward to, this is the question that does seem to, stand out, more than anything really.
Go on then. So what was the question?
So how can we have a gas pressure? How can we breathe air? How do we have gas pressure without a container? How does that happen?
Right. So I mean, I've bounced this around a lot with like your Nathan Oakleys and your Anthony Rileys, quite a few times. And first of all, you've got to define what you mean by gas pressure, or explain what you think gas pressure is, so we can, because if we're not on the same page on that, we'll get nowhere.
It's like PSI rated, isn't it? It's like PSI,
yeah,
basically.
But what causes it?
Yeah,
what is it?
Like in a tire, you've got gas pressure, and once you put a hole into that, the air will rush out. It will go to the available space, and that's if it doesn't do that, then that's a law that it will do that. And if it doesn't, it's a violation.
But what causes? And I mean, I know what you're saying. What gas pressure is, or you're talking about something that's pressurized, or you're talking about a pressurized system, which is different. What is gas pressure?
The gas pressure is the PSI. Like we're breathing it, the air that we've got down here. That's basically my understanding of it. It's just air that's pressing on us down, or from the air that's pressing down on us. It's the pressure that we feel.
Okay. Well, that was slightly bit. I mean, like, saying that gas pressure is the PSI is like saying the speed is the miles per hour. Where really, when we talk about speed, it's the distance it's the rate of movement over. It's the rate of movement, isn't it? For example. So we're talking about the cause of it, and you've kind of tried to answer that by talking about the air pushing down. And the very first problem you've got there is that you've talked about air pushing down. So if air is pushing down, why do we need a container? Why do we like a glass of water? Because if a glass of water, if I have that, I don't need a lid. It pushes down. All right, I don't need a lid because it's pushing down. But yet, if I put it in a vacuum chamber, and I start sucking all the air out, what you'd say is, it will jump out the top of the container. But that's not what we see. So actually, it boils. But I've just thrown myself there. What was I saying? Yeah. What's your understand? What did I say then?
Well, basically, what is pressing on? Oh no, I say pushing down on us, but
there we go. So if it's pushing down,
it's all in all directions, really, though, isn't it? Air pressure is in all directions. I mean, it's not just pushing down on us mainly, but it is pushing on us all directions. Everywhere you walk, there's air there, and there's a pressure of air that we experience, that we can all agree.
Would you say it's mainly pushing down, or would you say that it's pushing equally in all directions?
I'd say equally in all directions.
Okay. Which, if it was in equally in all directions, and if I maybe take like a ball here of people that can see, locally, and we go back to the difference between local and larger scales, then locally around this hand, there will be a measurable difference in pressure between the bottom of my hand and top of my hand. It will be very small, but it is still measurable. But when we look at the atmosphere as a whole, we have such a massive difference in pressure. So if it is pushing equally in all directions, why do we not have an equal pressure at the top of the atmosphere?
Why do we not have equal pressure at the top of the atmosphere? Because I believe it's because it's contained, but we're supposed to be understanding. We're supposed to be explaining how we have gas pressure without a container. That's the problem.
And that's exactly where I'm going with it. But to start with, you kind of said, I'm trying to kind of hint at, if you like, the general trend of the atmosphere being pulled down because of gravity, etc. But I want to get to gas pressure in a second. But you've said that you think all through the atmosphere it pushes equally in all directions. Now, if it's pushing equally in all directions, then why is it not pushing up to even out the pressure in the atmosphere?
That's because we have because it's contained. And it's bouncing off the container and coming back down.
Why does it not push up? Because if you go back to the beginning of the debate where I said, if I take the lid off that box, what will happen to the air? And you said it will instantly rush out and equalize the pressure. Yeah. It will immediately and instantly rush out. So why is it not, which is it happens very quickly, doesn't it? If I had a balloon here and I popped it very, very quickly at this local level, why is it not immediately rushing? Why do we not feel that as continual air current?
The thing is, you're asking more questions and not really answering the question. I'm saying to you that the biogeochemical cycle is the reason we have a gradient, and that's why and only when the sun comes up excites them particles, they go up, and then they get stopped by a barrier. Whereas you're saying in your model, there is no barrier. So they should just escape out, and that should be the entropy. Should escape into the low atmosphere, into the vacuum of space. But you're not telling me why it's not. That's the question: is how do we have a gas pressure without a container? So in a flat Earth model, there is a container, and that's why it does that. But you're supposed to be educating me on why it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take what you've just said there, because I know you've talked about the creation of gases down at the local level, etc. But we did agree on that point that there was no evidence for it, and you didn't have an explanation for it. So we have agreed on that. Now I know you said that the people telling you that aren't wrong, right, or might not be wrong, but I think it's up to you really to go away and say, well, are they wrong? Because I'm telling you they are wrong. There is no scientific explanation. There's no scientific paper. There's no scientific study. There is no scientific possibility at all of gases being produced at the bottom, like at ground level, that causes somehow this pressure gradient into the air. But anyway, let's talk about gas pressure itself. Gas pressure itself is the collision of gas particles against each other or off a surface that you put into that area of the atmosphere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I was to look here now, right, if you look on the Zoom meet, this little imaginary kind of sphere I've got in front of me.
Yeah.
Inside that little imaginary sphere is a gas pressure of 14.7 psi, wouldn't you say?
Inside the sphere.
This imaginary sphere, right, if I was to put a pressure...
But we're talking about how we have gas pressure and an open container on the outside of the ball.
Well, I'm getting to that, but it's, I'm going to have to walk you through it, okay? Yeah. But in this, imagine, this little space here, if I was to take something to measure the gas pressure and put it in that space, it would measure 14.7 psi, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I've got my window open, I've got my door open. This isn't a sealed system, okay? So if I've got the door open and the window open, and I put that in there and I get 14.7 psi, where's the container?
The container is the ball itself.
What ball? Because it was an imaginary ball, just with
an imaginary ball. Oh, but you can't measure that
so
gas.
If I put something...
Okay, I hear what you're saying. But how are you weighing that gas? How do you weigh gas? Gas is not an intramolecular bond. It doesn't have intramolecular bonds like solids and liquids. So how are you determining that?
Well, how am I measuring the pressure of gas?
Yeah. How do you do that? That container?
Well, you can buy devices that just measure gas pressure. You take them out and it tells you what the pressure is. I could do it with a bag of crisps. I could take a bag of crisps and I could look at it.
Yeah, but you need a container to do that. You can't measure gas pressure without a container. That's what we're getting at here. Well, you're just saying, imagine some gas in front of me.
Where's the container?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We are contained in the flat Earth model. It is contained, but in your globe model, it's a violation.
So there we go. I think that's hit the nail on the head, because you've just talked about in the flat Earth model there must be a concept. I think any flat Earth model that's ever been presented falls apart really easily. And this one simple question seems to be stumping you that if I take something that's going to measure the gas pressure, put it here, I'm going to measure the gas pressure. Where is the container? Where is the container here? And it's like you saying, well, how are you measuring it? Or there must be a container. I've got the window open. I've got the door open. Where is the container here? And if I walked up to the hills that I live at the back of, it would measure a lower pressure without me going through a barrier. So where is the container up there when I'm measuring that? Where is the container around that? That
that's what I'm saying. In the flat Earth model, it's contained. But you're trying to explain to me how you're measuring PSI, how you got gas pressure, and how you're actually measuring it when it's not contained. This is the problem. We're not. It's not the answer.
In the flat Earth model, in the flat Earth model, you said in the flat Earth model it's contained, yeah?
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting on a flat Earth now, okay, and I've got my little pressure measuring device and it says 14.7 psi here, let's assume we're living in your model that you've got. In your model now, there is a container somewhere. Where is it?
All right, we don't, but it's like what they call the antecedent, isn't it? Because we have gas pressure, therefore it must be contained because we can actually test the pressure in it. So, but you're telling me in an open system you can test the pressure, but that doesn't make sense because you need it to be contained in order to test it, because it isn't an intramolecular bond. It doesn't have that like solids and liquids, so you can test them. With gas, they're intra. So they don't group together. So you need to contain it in order to get that PSI reading. But you're saying you just put a thing in the air. That's a violation on the grand scale of things. You need to explain to me how we've got gas pressure in the first place. That's what's not being answered here.
So what's I mean, to be honest, like, what's happening here is, like, you do seem to be repeating all the things that Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warrior say, without having, and just like and I don't blame you because they don't have the understanding of it either, but you just seem to be saying there must be a container, there must be a container. But there isn't when I put that there, and I could climb up to the top of Mount Everest and I could get a different pressure, and there isn't one, and I can't see the container. And the simple reason, everything that you are saying boils down to the fact that you must not believe in gravity. That's what it boils down to. You must not believe in gravity.
Well, gravity requires a belief.
Right. Well, in that case, gravity requires a belief. Let's have a look at a few things where gravity doesn't require a belief. Can you pull my PowerPoint up, please, Creaky? Because honestly, we could talk about this gas pressure all day, but it all comes down to the fact that essentially you don't believe in gravity. That's what it boils down to, the whole thing. The pressure gradient boils down to not believing in gravity. Having an atmosphere next...
Sorry.
Yeah, but it does, doesn't it? Do you know what I'm saying?
But your answer, realistically, should have been, when I asked you a straight question, your answer should have been, the reason we have your gas pressure is because gravity is acting like a container. Basically, that's what you should have said, but you haven't said that. You give me like abstract explanations and telling me to imagine imaginary balls and ducked and dived around the answer, which was very, not dishonest, but do you understand how these certain questions that are being asked are leading, is leading people with common sense to think to themselves, right, this doesn't make sense. And a common folk can understand these particular principles. I don't need a vast understanding of things. I get the gist of what you're saying, and I know that I might not have a vast understanding, but that doesn't discredit the fact that there is certain things that are inconsistent and not making sense.
But I mean, I'll be honest. Like, the reason I didn't just say gravity acts as a container is because I assume you've heard that a million times over, and that wasn't good enough for you, and so we were delving a little bit deeper. Do you know what I mean? Because I failed to believe that you've not heard that before. You know what I mean? So I was going a little bit deeper. But Creaky, if I can start at slide 61. So we want to talk about gravity, and we want to talk about rotation. Just let us know when you got slide 61 up. Now,
61 Broomy, is on screen now.
Thanks, Broomy. You're going to have to be watching the watch page for this, I'm afraid, because
absolutely.
Okay, so there was the idea, and where I'm going with this is, if you have an idea and then you test it and it doesn't work, you throw it out. Yeah, does that make sense? But if you've got an idea, it's changed my PowerPoint now. If you've got an idea and it does work, right, and then it makes constant, accurate predictions, etc., that contradicts a flat stationary Earth, then you've got to accept it. So this is the Earth as all science kind of understands it. That red arrow is going to represent the gravitational force pulling towards the center of the Earth, the gravitational force that you want evidence for, and that's why we're doing this. It's evidence of that gravitational force.
Okay.
As the Earth spins, like if I've got a ball with water on and I'm spinning it, you would imagine if I'm spinning it really, really fast on Earth, so speaking of flat Earth's language, that it would throw the water off the ball. You happy with that? Yeah. So we've got two forces in play. We have that kind of pseudo-centrifugal force that's throwing the water off, which is represented by the green arrow, and we have the red arrow, which is a gravitational force. Now, the Earth is spinning, like we said, which is causing that green force. It's spinning west to east. And what that means is, if I can go to the next slide, please, Creaky. If we go, because it's spinning west to east, if we start traveling west, if you like, we are trying to go against that spin. So if the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour to the east, and we travel west by 200 miles an hour, then effectively now we're only traveling east by 800 miles an hour. Do you see what I'm saying? We're slowing down the movement. We're going east, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
In the model. Okay. So when we do that, this kind of pseudo-centrifugal force that we're talking about is going to decrease. And that's what you're seeing on the blue arrow, because we're not spinning as fast. So the difference between the gravitational force...
Sorry to stop you. I can't see the presentation. I can only see you two.
No, you look on the watch page. The watch page.
I'll have to go to the watch. One second. I wonder what...
Yeah, remember.
What's the watch page?
Oh, yeah.
I'm watching it now. Yeah, I'm watching it.
So if you've got it, can you see it now?
Yeah.
So quick, just go back one slide, just so we can
Yeah.
see what I was talking about, and then right. Have you gone back one?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a little bit delay, but you'll catch up. So essentially, what we're saying is we have this: the green arrow represents that force that's throwing us off the Earth. Yeah, that one that I was talking about, and the red arrow is a gravitational force that pulls us towards the Earth. But because the Earth is rotating west to east as it goes towards the east, if we start traveling west, then we are effectively reducing the speed we are spinning to the east. Or if we're going to the east at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator and we travel west 200 miles an hour, we're now effectively only going east 800 miles an hour. So we're spinning less. If you go to the next, less quickly, if you go to the next slide, Creaky. And what that does is it reduces the force that's trying to throw us off the Earth. The balance between these forces changes. So that gravitational force remains as big as it was, but the force throwing us off becomes smaller, right? And that affects our weight. That tells us if we're actually traveling west, we should weigh more. And if you go to the next slide, Creaky, if we are traveling east, we're actually speeding up that movement and we should weigh less. They are predictions made by two things: a prediction made by a rotating Earth and a prediction made by an Earth that's got a gravitational pull to it. Now, if we go on to the next slide, and I know I'm taking up a lot of time here, I'll give you equal time, honestly, when I've finished. If you just go on to the next slide there, Creaky.
Yeah.
This isn't just a prediction that science makes. This is something that is real world. It's called the Otvos effect, and I always pronounce the guy's name wrong, so I'm sorry about that. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. And we can see here a video where this experiment was actually taken, and when we travel west, we do get an increased weight, and when we travel east, we get a decreased weight on the same mass. Now, you might say, well, you know, what was going on in that particular experiment there? But if we go on to the next slide, geodesists have to make corrections for this effect all the time. This is just an example of one of the that's coming up on the screen in a second. Just an example of one of the equations they use, and you know, you can see what all the factors are there. It's pretty complicated stuff. And if we go on to the next page here, and I could have pulled up 20, 30, 40 of these. There are scientific paper after scientific paper after scientific paper for people that are correcting for this Otvos effect. For navigation purposes, for equipment purposes, over and over and over and over and over again. You know, they're having to produce research to correct for this effect so they can use their equipment in the way that they want to be using it. That's all with the screen sharing. Thanks, Creaky. So effectively, when you say gravity isn't real, it's never been proved. In the real world, and that's only one example, but in the real world, we are using it and we are correcting for it. Yeah. But this is where the Dunning-Kruger kind of label comes in, because unless you've looked into that kind of stuff, you're not going to know it exists. And I could show you other papers you just don't know exist unless you've looked into it.
All right.
And, I mean, yeah. So go.
You give us a quick crash course on basically a lot of stuff, and you know, you're presupposing a ball because I've never seen any curvature, for one. Secondly, you've mentioned this is an abstract idea. This isn't reality. This is abstract. This is you explaining something that we don't see in reality. Now, you saying that gravity is a force. I'm trying to work out
reality because the papers.
All right. Well,
sorry. I will come back.
All right,
I'll give you that time, and I don't mean to interrupt. I'm really sorry.
That's fine. You said gravity was a force. And by saying it's a force, I mean, Einstein says it's an effect. You know, the displacement of mass causing the bending of fabric space-time is the effect of gravity. We don't have gravity as a force. Newton himself told not to have, he doesn't subscribe to force to himself either. So where are you getting this? Even a lot of physicists across the world don't agree that it's a force. So I'm kind of curious why you're saying that gravity is a force when you can't even demonstrate it either. Why giving me graphs and abstract?
Okay.
It's a nice story, but it's not actually it's not actually something you can demonstrate.
Okay, so if we I'll answer both those questions. But if we talk first of all about, you said I was giving you concepts that isn't the real world. Like I said, this is where often I criticize flat earthers for being very closed-minded, because there are, you know, you could search those out for yourself. If you go into Google, corrections for the Otvos effect, you will find scientific paper after scientific paper after scientific paper after scientific paper after scientific paper. It's all there. There is a willingness from flat earthers not to even look and critique it and look at it, but it's there. And it's that whole, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know what I mean? It is there. So you can say it's not the real world, but I've shown you the scientific papers. I've shown you a recreation of the experiment, and it's a very well-known effect. And it is that simple. That's like me saying to, my daughter, oh, trees aren't real. And it doesn't matter how many trees she points out to me. I'm just saying, no, they're just big plants with a bit of wood on them.
But
right?
the point
they
is,
are.
No, go on.
So, but the force, okay, so you want to bring up, and again, the whole kind of, and I hate to think that you were kind of like a victim of Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warrior's tactics, but when you get into discussions like this with Sleeping Warrior or Nathan Oakley, they will immediately, they can't mute you and shout over because they can't argue proper science. They've never looked at this. They don't understand it. What they'll do is they'll switch to definitions and debate tactics, which is what you're doing now. And I can see you're modeling quite a lot of what they do as we go through this because you picked it up from them. But essentially, if we look at Newton's first law, an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by an external force. If an acceleration if an object experiences an acceleration, then we say something is acting like a force upon it. Now, if you want to go into, well, hang on, the way Einstein describes the force is a curvature of space-time, or the way Newton described, Newton never claimed to describe how it works. He modeled it really well with the maths. Einstein had an attempt at describing how it works. Okay, but essentially what you're doing there is you're running away from actually the science argument, and you're thinking, well, if I can get him talking about is gravity a force, is it not? If I can get him talking about Newton versus Einstein, then what I'm doing is I'm just biding a bit of time. And it looks
to be honest, like, I mean, I asked you a straight question. How do you have a gas pressure without a container? You haven't demonstrated how that's possible. You've given me, a nice, in effect, a nice story and lots of writing papers. Yeah, I understand that these are probably credible sources of information, and these things need to be understood in order to talk about it. But the fact is, we can actually demonstrate certain things in reality, and it doesn't need all this stuff. It doesn't need these complicated voodoo spells and read this book, read that book, and learn this, learn that, because it just sounds to me like it's just pure indoctrination. It doesn't. You cannot demonstrate gas pressure without a container. So if you cannot demonstrate it, then all these things are irrelevant. In the end of the day, real science is what you can demonstrate and what you can prove. So for me, if the globe might, like, for example, I've picked up everything from the globe side also. Remember, I've been a glober debating this stuff. I've heard all the arguments over and over again. Even when it comes to curvature, they say to me stuff like, oh, you can't see the curvature because, when you're looking, it's due to your highlight and there's a hidden and the angle of the Earth. And then when they give you these drawings to explain a horizon, I see they even draw a curve on the picture, but I don't see that in reality. But they're drawing it on this piece of paper and then telling me that if I understand this piece of paper, that's why I'm not seeing it in reality. Now that to me is basically saying, don't look at reality, my friend. Look at this drawing, this lovely drawing, this abstract version of reality, and this is your reality now. And that's a good way to deceive people, and that's where this all comes back to. Now, I used to be a glober, and this is why I don't like it anymore, because it comes to the point where when you science, for example, supposed to welcome and critique, supposed to welcome criticism. Now, when you criticize it, all you ever get is, oh, you don't quite understand what you're talking about. You don't understand this. You don't, and that seems to be the only response you get. What we want, what flat earthers want, is respect, because they're working harder and. Not to be looked at as idiots. These are people with general questions that need demonstrations, and if you can't demonstrate it, it's very, very reasonable and logical for people to reject it. I think there's a saying called, I think it's Occam's razor. Evidence, assertions without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Hitchens razor, that's the one.
Hitchens razor, yeah. Which is another one of Sleeping Warriors thing. I can tell you picked a lot up from him, but I think let's just put this whole gas pressure thing to bed because. Ultimately, and it does feel like you're speaking to Nathan Oakley or Quantum Eraser or Sleeping Warrior because they just say the same thing over and over and over and over and over, as if they've not listened to what's been said in between. They just say the same thing over and over and over. We talked about gas pressure. You asked me how to show you pressure without a container, and I showed you that we could measure the gas pressure here, and I asked you where the container was, and essentially. That's where that discussion ended, because you cannot show. What you're saying is, well, there must be a container, but where is it? If you want to ask about gas pressure without a container, there is a difference between pressure and pressurized. And let's go down that route, right? What is the difference between pressure and pressurized? What is the difference?
I don't know the difference between pressure and pressurized. I don't know what you're asking me. Could you?
And that is what flat earthers don't understand. And I think we've hit the nail on the head. And I think after this, you will no longer be a flat earther. when you talk about pressure and pressurized, we are talking pressure is the pressure I can measure down here. Yeah. So I've got my little pressure measuring stick, put it in. I get my 1 atmosphere of pressure. Pressurized is if I take a ball of gas, put it next to it, and have it at higher pressure. So I could have that at 2 atmospheres of pressure, and that's pressure like you get in a car tire. And then when you poke the knife in the car tire, the pressure will equalize because you're going from pressurized to no longer pressurized. It's
but
out.
Do you concede that you can't demonstrate gas pressure without a container? Do you concede that?
Well, no, because we're talking about pressure.
You're talking about it, but you can't demonstrate it.
No, what's impossible is pressurized without a container, not pressure. That's why I said what the difference between pressurized and pressure is very significant. They're not the same thing.
Okay.
If I have, for example, again, if you look on the Zoom screen, the pressure, the gas that's over here in this hand at 1 atmosphere of pressure, and the gas over here that's at 1 atmosphere of pressure are not pressurized relative to each other. They are at the same pressure. They're not pressurized. So one isn't going to go and rush in to fill the space of the other one because they are not pressurized. There's no huge difference.
I hear what you're saying. Because it's not pressurized at the surface level. That's why it's not like breaking the entropy and going out into the air because it's not pressurized. But it is gas pressure by effect. But so we still have gas pressure that's still not going out into the vacuum of space. But the bottom line is it's a good way you're explaining it. But it still doesn't demonstrate it. We don't have any demonstrations of it.
Right.
This is something now I have to believe what you're telling me with all these graphs and all these explanations, that therefore it's possible. And what you got to understand is I am interested in what you can prove and demonstrate. I understand that you can explain things very well, but that doesn't mean that you're right because you explain things with a lot of
Let's get there. Let's get there to that explanation, shall we? Let's get to that explanation because I think we've put that bit to bed, right? I think we've put to bed the difference between pressure and pressurized. So I think now the question of can you show a gas pressure without a container is the wrong question, right? I think you accept that now. I think you accept that the question should be, can you show a pressurized gas without a container? That is the question you should be asking.
Well, we
all right?
Have gas pressure.
So are we happy with that? We'll put that to bed and we've changed the question from pressure to pressurized, yeah?
So you're going to show me. Yeah. You're going to show me how we can have gas pressurized air without a container. Is that what you're going to show me?
Well, here's the thing. You see, yes, because pressurized is a difference in pressure, which is our gas pressure gradient, and we can even if you don't want to take a barometer or anything like that, you could do it in a bag of crisps. You can take a bag of crisps that has a certain gas pressure inside it. You can walk up the top of a mountain. You can see that bag of crisps inflate because there's a lower pressure. Or you could take a barometer and you can measure it. But we have right down at sea level here a pressure that is pressurized in relation to the pressure on top of a mountain, for example. That is our pressurized difference, and there is no container. And by extension of that, you keep getting these changes as the pressure gets lower and lower, and the pressure down here at the Earth is pressurized by a level of 1 whole atmosphere from up there. But when you do get right up on the edge of space, the pressure it's not pressurized up there.
So what stops the gases? What stops the gases?
Does that make sense? Like, does that answer? What is the issue with that question?
Can you hear me? Check. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh yeah. But what stops them gases? Going out. Then what stops them going out into space? What actually stops them? Because gases, molecules in motion. Check.
No, Tommy, we can hear you.
Did you drop out then and come back in?
You did, Catz. Tommy was talking. Yeah, you dropped out. You froze in a rather humorous pause as well just before you did. So have a look at that later.
Sorry, I'm back in now. I could still hear what was being said. I think I could. I thought you'd gone to right. Crack on, Tommy. Sorry, what was your question?
So what stops these molecules escaping out into gas then if it's an open container?
Right. So what we've let's get straight to, because this is the nitty gritty of the point. Yeah. We have accepted a lot, and I think it's important to review this for any of the flat earthers in the chat that are watching before I get to that. We've accepted that asking for gas pressure without a container is a very dumb question. Asking for pressurized gas without a container is a better question, all right? We've already said that there's a pressurized 1 atmosphere down here compared to lower atmosphere above, and there is no barrier, so we've already established that. But when we get to the top of space, because the gas has done so much work against gravity, because the pressure has followed the gradient and got to zero, it's no longer pressurized. See what I'm saying? It's no longer pressurized. So I can show you, pressurized gas, I can show you pressurized gas not going from one place to another.
Okay.
Can you show me a container?
But Newton's first law of motion applies that gas molecules will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. So when they go up there, they will continue in that motion. And you're just saying it's no longer pressurized, and that's what you're saying, stopping them gases escaping.
Now you're getting there slowly, okay? But are we happy, first of all, right? Because let's say we're happy to concede that asking for gas pressure without a container is a stupid question. We're happy to concede that. As opposed to pressurized.
Pressurized pressure, we have gas pressure, and you haven't demonstrated it. So I mean, I'm not going to just like. I'm not just jumping flip flopping between the two. I feel like the reason you're.
They are different things.
Well, technically, we have gas pressure, or you want to say it's pressurized, or you're not really answering how this works. Makes sense on a globe.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm getting there. I am getting there. But the thing is, in these debates, like what you so rarely get with the likes of Sleeper Warrior and Nathan Oakley,
I get
is them
that.
digging down to the nitty gritty, which is what we're doing. And if we're going to get a full, there's no point me just giving you like a one-line thing to throw away if there's no substance beneath it.
You want me to concede things, but you're not admitting that you can't demonstrate it, and that's something you haven't said. You haven't conceded.
No, I can. We're getting there. We're absolutely getting there. We're absolutely getting there. I can absolutely demonstrate everything I'm about to tell you.
You can explain it, but you can't demonstrate it.
No, I can demonstrate it. I can demonstrate it. So, but we've got to make sure we're asking the right questions. And rather than taking like the Nathan Oakley approach of, I'm going to derail this conversation, right? Let's follow it through to the demonstration, all right? But make sure that on the way we understand what we're saying.
I don't really want to parrot. Just one point. I don't want to parrot everything, and I have my own sorts of views and that, but I have listened to a lot of flat earthers, and I have tried to understand what they're also saying, and these things do make sense to people and to myself. And I know you're going to say, I don't quite understand everything, blah blah blah. I understand that, but when I bring, obviously, no one knew I was going to debate you, so I actually do a bit of homework, do a bit of research to actually bring something to the table, to actually get into the nitty gritty of stuff, to get to this point. But I am just going to become a globe earther again, because there's so many other things that contradict, common sense. These are things that make sense on a common sense level, and you're just giving me basically what seems gish gallop. I know you're going to say that I don't know and understand, but that seems to be the go-to for every single argument that Globus propose. Oh, you just don't understand. Oh, you just, this technicality, this thing. If it was easy as simple as you say it is, then you should just be able to demonstrate it. But you're saying that you can demonstrate.
I feel we're getting off track.
Okay.
I feel we're getting off track because I feel what's happening is like you're taking the Nathan Oakley approach of when we're actually discussing the science. Everything you've just been said in the last 30 minutes is demonstrate it now. That's the feeling I'm getting, rather than having the conversation.
Yeah.
So and that's not how we operate, because it doesn't get anybody anywhere other than aggravated and wound up. Ultimately, I am trying to tell you. I apologize. That you want, and it's all right. But if at the end of it you say I'm not happy with that as a demonstration, you just tell me.
Okay.
But if we are going to get somewhere, which is what we all want to do, we have to accept there is a difference between pressure and pressurized. And I know you didn't know there was a difference between the two, but that's why I'm saying now you know the difference. Can we accept that the correct question should be, can you show me pressurized gas without a container as opposed to gas pressure without a container?
Let's go.
Can you accept that is actually the...
Yeah, let's go.
So that's the best question. Okay, so now we know it's pressurized gas, and we talk about pressurized meaning a difference in pressure. Yes, I can show you that because I can measure the pressure. You can do it. You can literally walk up a hill with a barometer and you can measure the difference in gas pressure, which is a pressurized system. Why does that not fulfill showing gas pressurized, different pressurized systems next to each other without a container? Why does that not fulfill that?
Because to have it pressurized in the first place, you need a container. I mean, to actually measure it in the first place without a container, it's a violation.
Where is the container when I walk up? So we go back to that again. So I've given you an example of a pressurized, like 1 atmosphere at ground level, there is far less gas pressure when we go higher up. They are different, different pressures. That is a pressurized system. I've got different pressures, right? So it's pressurized. We don't walk through any kind of barrier. We don't walk through a container. And what you are saying is, essentially, you believe that there must be a container, but you're not telling me why and where the container is.
Because
so where is that container?
That's what I'm trying to say. You know what? That's what you asked me the right question there. I don't know how you're having a pressurized system without a container in the first place. You're just saying gravity.
And that's what I said before. I said your whole argument, no matter where we go with it, is the fact that you don't believe in gravity. That's where we go with it.
Because you can't. So we've established. You can only show the effects of it. Sorry to talk over you. Because you only show the effects.
So
of it
if we go, no problem. Oh, I think I can actually. So I mean, we talked about the Eötvös effect and how that is a real world effect. But let's go just a little bit. Let's just go with something a little bit different. Can you go to slide 52, please, Creaky? Now, the flat Earth argument to this is very much similar to the flat Earth argument to a container. They'll just say, this is fake, but they'll provide no evidence to it, or there has to be a dome, or even though nobody can see a dome, even though the simple fact that meteorites come out of the sky and land on the Earth show that there can't be a container. Otherwise, they're smashing the dome to bits. However, are we on slide 52, Creaky?
We are, yeah. It's on the screen now.
Okay. So these are the GRACE satellites, which was introduced to me actually by PH Tony, an incredibly intelligent guy. Now, contrary to what a lot of people think, if you go on to the next slide, please, Creaky, can you see the watch page, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm loading it up now. 1 second.
Okay.
Yep, watching, looking.
Okay. So you see the satellites now, and you should see in a second if he's gone on to the next slide. What the GRACE satellite does. Now, the GRACE satellite maps the differences in Earth's gravitational field on the surface of the Earth, because contrary to what some people might be taught at school, for example, it's not the same all over. There are fluctuations in the Earth's gravity, and these fluctuations have real-world effects. If we go on to the next slide, please. For example, PhD Tony, in his job, as a geophysicist, he studies the recession of, you've gone backwards. You're going to the one that looks like the ice cap, Creaky.
I went from 53 to 54.
Go forward again. There should be one that looks like an ice cap. Can you see it? Black background.
Yeah. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Nice and clear.
Oh no, what's on my screen is the globe.
No, we've got Tommy. What can you see? Can you see?
That's the one. You've got it.
Inches of water.
I must have a lag.
Yeah. Okay.
I must have a lag. Yeah. Sorry, guys. So what PhD Tony, does as part of his job, and he, there's thousands of people in the, in science that use, that study similar things, but he will use the information given to him by the GRACE satellite to tell him how much the ice, the glaciers are changing in terms of what the sea level is around them, how much they're receding because of climate change, etc. And he's using that from a satellite, which obviously is using the gravitational anomalies that it's measuring from the surface of the Earth. And when he goes to those positions, he is correct. So just like the Eötvös effect, we have something that is applied and real in the real world. But let's go a little bit further. We can go on to the next slide, please, Creaky. The same satellites, there should be another slide coming in a second. The same satellites can also be used to measure groundwater levels because they obviously affect the gravitational field strength of the surface of the Earth. And if you go on to the next slide, this is paper number 1. So here's a paper number 1 where information from the GRACE satellite has been used to measure groundwater levels, and it's been used to accurately predict after droughts, etc., how much water there's going to be in certain positions, so people can actually go and they can carry out case studies at the site and use that information. But when they get there, it matches up with what the GRACE satellite has been telling them. If we go on to the next slide, please. Here's another one. The next slide is the one after the 2011 drought in Texas. Again, the information that they're getting from these satellites, when these geodesists are getting that information and they're getting to those points, they are seeing at ground level what these satellites have predicted. So there's at least 2 examples I've shown you there, the Eötvös effect and the use of information from the GRACE satellite, which uses a gravitational changes in gravitational field strength on the surface of Earth that produce real world data that is used. What is your answer to how reliable this real world data is? What is your answer to how we actually get this data?
My answer to it, you're using satellites, which is, obviously all the stuff in the sky and, NASA and the agencies and stuff like that. Now you're basically using their information to kind of confirm, if it is flat and it is a dome. And, you've made a good little comment. The best comment out of everything you said was, how do we have meteorites come into, the dome and stuff? I think that was probably the best question out of all the stuff you did say. I mean, like I said, it just reminds me of when, I'm seeing stuff in the horizon that I shouldn't see, and people tell me to look at this refraction calculator. I say, why don't I see things that give me a drawing about stuff? It's the same thing I used to argue the same things. Oh, you just need to look at this graph. This isn't reality. I'm looking at reality, and I want to see things in reality demonstrated in order to make my decisions on. All right, I understand this is education. I understand this is stuff that you're bringing to the table, but it isn't effective to flat earthers or people that want to use that, actual things that you can actually see and actual experiment, an actual demonstration of these things, rather than look at this drawing. This drawing is your reality, and that doesn't digest well. And now you understand why flat earthers are not ignoring it. It's just that this isn't what we're asking for when we ask for a demonstration. We're not asking for a story and some pictures.
Tom, can I just jump in just to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking for as well, and for your attention as well, Catz. So, Tom, so when you say you want Catz to provide a demonstration of how gas is contained without being in a closed system, you want him to do that right now on camera in his room, and that will be acceptable? I've looked
around. I've saw the Cavendish experiment as probably the best bit of evidence to suggest there's a mass attracting mass, for example, but that only shows the effects, not a force. And he's trying to say, well, gravity is a force, but I can't show you a demonstration of it. But what I can show you is that basically it's stopping the air molecules in motion escaping and going into entropy into the lower system. And
so that we can sorry, Tom, so that we can move this on, then what will you accept as a tangible proof, if you like, or a satisfactory demonstration while we're live? Because that seems to be what you're getting at, to me anyway.
I've looked around, and I have to be honest with what I can see and what I experience in reality. I know there seems to be a lot of parroting and stuff from people that have been fighting this battle for a long time, and I sympathise with Catz when he says, I've heard these arguments before. It sounds like the same people that just reject nonsense. I hear exactly where it's coming from, but as an individual, I still have these problems. I'm with my own demonstrations when I look over the horizon and boats disappearing, and then they zoom in, and they come back, and they go, "Oh, that's not the true horizon. It isn't the true horizon. It isn't the true hidden." There's so much like. The sun and the moon look in the same size. Oh, but they're not, because look at my drawing. Look at this trigonometry, I call it. Look at this
I know exactly what you're saying. I really do hear what you're saying, but you keep saying that whatever Catz is saying isn't a demonstration. So what would you consider to be a satisfactory demonstration?
A physical demonstration of gas pressure without pressured or pressure without container. An actual physical thing that we can look at and go, right, there we go. There's gas pressure in there that we can measure when it's not contained. Which is just
but you don't necessarily mean right now, because surely you must understand how ridiculous a request that would be while he's in his studio.
I understand that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but I'm just trying to be honest from my position. That
and the same for me, man. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you. I'm just trying to follow along as best I can.
And I sympathise with a lot of people that have gone to university, studied, dedicated their whole life to a craft, and really put in the work, and then someone comes along, off YouTube or whatever, or and starts to think that he knows better than these people. And it's not a position of authority for me to say I know better than you. I think everybody in the world is entitled, even a child is entitled to do experiments on the world that they live in. And it may be pathetic and stupid, and we may laugh at some people that do that, but the bottom line is I can't see a physical demonstration. I understand this is probably a good explanation for people that work this way, but not everybody works under them same parameters.
And yet you believe the Earth is flat.
I believe I'm 80-20, so I'm still.
No, I remember that from very early on, and you're not 100%
No.
in the rabbit hole yet. Your feet are still hanging out, and if we're quick enough, we can grab you and pull you back. But that's all it was, and I know it was a long-winded way of asking you a simple question, but I thought you wanted Catz to actually provide some sort of physical demonstration right now in his man cave or his, whatever he calls his room. If that's not the case,
the reason I ask these questions, not just because I've heard other people say it before, but it is because we've got the Cavendish. That's the best we've got.
Right, but you have heard plenty of people say it. Can I just ask you one thing as well? Well, it'll be two things now, won't it? So, right, so there's no container, so therefore there can't be gas pressure. How do you account for that on a flat Earth then? Because obviously you've got the same oxygen to breathe as us, and what's keeping your atmosphere from floating off into
a container?
The great abyss?
That's why it makes sense.
Okay, yeah, but what is that container? I
know it's mad, isn't it? Like some invisible wall that's like outside of our reach, and on the outskirts of this planet that we're
So basically, then you can't tell us as a flat earther what contains your atmosphere, but we must be able to tell you and physically demonstrate it for it to be acceptable.
Yeah,
even though you can't do that yourself based on your beliefs.
Yeah, I totally. That makes a lot of logical sense.
Yeah,
it's like, that's fair.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be a dick or anything. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, but we do know that if we put air in a balloon, it's contained, and then we can measure the mass inside it, and we can test the pressure inside it because it's contained. But without the container, that seems to be impossible to have pressure. Because without the air being contained, gas isn't gas is has intramolecular bonds. It can't be weighed unless you freeze the gas, which we can't freeze the atmosphere to test it. So it has to, when it's contained. Now we can test the pressure in it. So that's why it makes sense that we can test it. So therefore it must be contained in some way. Otherwise, he's saying that his container in effect is gravity. Gravity is his container. But gravity is something that it isn't a force, but he's saying it is a force for this particular case, which is. It's kind of like, I understand the concepts. I may not have a vast understanding, and I understand that flat earthers have the harder battle in arguing these points. But I mean, it's not just me parroting what they're saying. I mean, this relates to a lot of things in the natural world that I see that my common sense is contradicted by maths and these drawings. Do you know what I mean? I see in reality, I do not see no curvature. I don't see it, but I'm yet to believe it's there because of drawings.
Right, but I've said this before, and I'll hand straight back to you, Catz, now. But you, Tommy, you breathe, don't you? You've not seen oxygen. You just accept that it's there. Yeah,
same as the container.
So you do accept there's a container then?
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean logically, the one with the less assumptions. Seems to be, there's another thing. The one with the less assumptions would be, there is still assumptions there, but it's a lot less than gravity and all this, that, and the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you were saying you accept there's a container based on your belief in the flat Earth model. So as Catz has asked you, and you've insisted that Catz makes a demonstration, so now I'm going to insist that you tell me where your container is. Is it the dome?
My container is from logical deduction.
No. That's not an answer. That's evasiveness. Is your container a dome? A glass dome made of blue.
I don't know.
Shiny stuff.
I concede. I cannot demonstrate a container, but I can demonstrate gas pressure in a gradient.
And yet we must, or it can't possibly be true. I'll hand you back over to Catz.
Lovely.
So, I mean, well, it is. I was going to say that obviously in the debate, it's gone the way that all kind of flat Earth debates gone. And that is that there's been no evidence for a flat Earth presented at all, and there never is. And I'm sure you've got to accept that there is no evidence for a flat Earth. It's not been presented. But what I think has been presented, and I'm absolutely delighted that you accepted the fact that asking, is gas pressure without a container possible? I'm delighted you've accepted that is a stupid question. I'm delighted you accepted that question is a dishonest question. It's not one that we should be asking. We should be asking, pressurized. And then we can talk about the pressure, and obviously there is no container or no membrane between down here and up there. Your entire argument seems to be that you just believe there must be a container, and that seems to be it. Well, let me ask you this question: even if there was a container, even if there was a container, which there isn't, why would that mean the Earth can't be round?
Well, I haven't seen any curvature. This is yet what I've got to believe because people are telling me that it's there when I've never seen it or experienced it in my life. So the container and the curvature are not linked. The container and the curvature are not linked at all. Well, everything that requires me to believe that's there is abstract explanations of reality. When I look in reality, I do not see 66-foot drop over 10 miles. I don't see it. And then when I say 66-foot drop, they go, it's not actually 66-foot drop. It's because there's a hidden of 50%. So you only see 33%. And then you think to yourself, well, I don't even see 33 feet drop. And then, you have to realize that flat earthers, they're trying to basically redo the whole of science again. Yes, they're not going to have all the answers. Yes, there's going to be things that they can't answer. But that's the beauty of it. That if the world as a collection do have it wrong, this is expected by people that are the minority that are considered crazy, and they're not. They're minds of people that do understand concepts, may not have the full credentials, but do understand there is stuff that doesn't make sense on a common sense level.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you now, right? 100% honest. If everybody's got it wrong. Okay, if all the people who work in the industries that I've talked to you about, geophysics, geodesic scientists, meteorologists, seismologists, astronomers, communications experts, weapons experts, etc. If we are to say that they've all got it wrong, do you think that they are going to be exposed by a bunch of people that don't know the difference between pressure and pressurized, that don't know how gas pressure is actually caused, what the cause of gas pressure is, people who won't even address simple things like the Oort-Vos effect or grey satellites, who will just not even look at it and deliberately shy away from which is what you did, because you just didn't want to go there. It was like, oh shit, he's brought up some scientific papers. It's real world data that makes predictions. We don't want to talk about it. So do you think people that are so weak in their academic and scientific understanding, do you think they're the people to correct us?
I totally think, you're in totally within. Yeah, they wouldn't be something that you would listen to. It would be something that you would ridicule. No, it would be something that you would look at. I understand, and I sympathise with that position, and that's exactly my view against flat earthers. It's been my view the last few years, and I've been ridiculing under the same aspects. But if you actually do give people a chance and actually do try to unlearn everything you have learned in the world, and actually do try to listen to what they're actually saying, it will bring you you'll bring you to a new understanding of things. And I do think, you've got credentials, you've got your papers, you've got stuff that people don't look at, and that's very well. But you're good at pointing out what I've done wrong, but you haven't really pointed out the fact that you haven't conceded, the fact that you can't demonstrate it, and these things that sorts of forces. You're contradicting with Newton. Hold on, son. You contradict with Newton and Einstein when it comes to gravity, because it's not a force, but then you're invoking it as a force. So if the education system and yourself aren't really teaching people that it's up for debate, it is up for debate. The gravity is up for debate.
Well, it isn't. But that's taken us down the route again, where let's not talk about the science. Let's cherry pick on definitions, and try and confuse things. Even when there's no, Einstein never said, oh God, my view about gravity is totally different to Newton's, and his equations were all completely wrong. Things have been refined, things have been improved, but it's only people like the Nathan Oakleys, the Sleeping Warriors, that give you that impression, because they, especially Nathan Oakley, he wants to milk the conversation so he can milk the show, milk his career on YouTube. He doesn't want to have proper discussions, which is why when I was talking to you before about do you know the difference between pressure and pressurized? And we had to get that nailed down. And you were just saying, show me now. Yeah. You were kind of taking like that. And I know you weren't doing it deliberately, but that's the kind of train of thought that these flat earthers have put you in. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of time.
Anything you like, mate. Anything you like.
Yeah, cool. When you say to me something like, when I say to you something like, can you explain how we get real world data from the grey satellites? Can you explain why we have to have scientific papers where people are figuring out corrections for the Oort-Vos effect? Can you explain why the Paris gun had to be adjusted for the Coriolis effect in World War One when it was, when I bring up the star trails, when I bring up all sorts, and I ask you to explain them away, just like we did with the gas pressure gradient at the beginning, you haven't really got a proper explanation as to why that's wrong. It's just a case of I don't believe. But on the flip side, you can give me any flat Earth part of the flat Earth model, any part of the flat Earth model, and I can tell you specifically and explicitly why it's wrong. So I'd like to flip it a little bit now, just to show you the difference. But it's very easy to try and pick at things, But let's see what the flat Earth model says. So give me any point of the flat Earth model you want torn apart, and I will do that. But I will do it with proper explanation and understanding. What do you want me to address?
Right then. Well, we see
of a flat Earth model.
Oh, a flat Earth model.
Yeah, that's what. So what I'm saying is, when you ask, when
you can't really attack the flat Earth model because one, there isn't one. Two,
exactly.
We don't deal with abstract versions of reality. We deal with reality itself. When I walk outside and I look at the
flat Earth proof, then sorry, flat Earth proof is what I should have said.
How can you prove to me what I'm seeing with my own eyes is incorrect?
No, so we want to say if you give me a flat Earth proof, then I will articulate. Right. I will. No. You can explain it. I'll accept an explanation, but then I will tell you specifically why you are wrong, in complete contradiction to why you can't specifically tell me why the yacht boss is wrong, etc.
But having how come the sun is 400 times further? And
so is that evidence for the flat Earth? Give me evidence for the flat Earth, and I will tell you why it's wrong.
I'm telling you about my experience as a person. I go outside, I don't feel any motion. It seems to present itself flat and motionless. I look at the sun and moon, and they look the same size to me.
Okay, let's deal with the sun and moon. And then we'll go to not feeling any movement when you stand on the Earth, which is, and I'm sure you've looked into that. That's fairly basic. But how is the sun and moon evidence for the flat Earth? How is the sun and moon evidence for flat Earth?
Right. What I can say is that I've always believed and always heard all the bits of story of the globe. I've become a globe skeptic. You know what I mean?
So you're not a flat earther, you're a globe skeptic.
Well, I am more of a flat earther now because I'm believing in what I can see and experience. Because I used to believe hold on a second. I've tried to explain this to you before. That flat Earth.
All right, go on.
If the whole world has, for example, let's just for argument's sake, imagine that it's true. We would be behind in explanation of things. There was going to be definitely more holes you could poke in. I agree with that. I conceded that when I explained that they're the minority and they're in the losing battle. So but when we look at what the globe tells us when we're supposed to see the geometric horizon, that summer happens because of the tilt and because of this and all the things that apparently the globe are claiming. There's things about that's inconsistent, which has pushed me away from it and made me realize that when I go out and experience what I experience, that is objectively true to me, and there's nothing that anyone could ever say to change that because it's what we see and what we experience in reality. It's not an abstract drawing. It's not an explanation. It's what we see. We take it at face value. This is what it is. That's the difference. I don't have a flat Earth model. I don't have things that need explanation.
Do you have one flat Earth proof though? Do you have just one proof that the Earth is flat that I can address? Because I know you said you're more of a globe skeptic, right? And I can present you with lots of proofs for the Earth being round, all right? And I know you I've tried to tonight, and maybe you're not understanding them, etc. Mm-hmm. I'm just giving you an opportunity because we're on a debate about the shape of the Earth. Just one. Do you have just one proof that the Earth is flat? And you can explain it.
When I go to the horizon, I experience a flat, motionless plane.
So basically, your senses when you are stood there.
Yeah, it looks flat to me.
Not really a flat Earth proof, though, is it?
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. You can't really debunk what I experience. How are you going to?
No, I'm not, and I wouldn't. If you stand there and you say that you don't feel like you're moving and things look flat to you, fine. But I would expect that anybody watching would, because we've all stood there.
I mean, everywhere when I've gone on the planes, right? When I've gone west or east, the plane times are exactly the same. We get centrifugal force when it comes to fucking. Sorry, I shouldn't have swear then. We get that when we shoot bullets. Apparently, the Coriolis effect, but we don't get it when we're on planes because of reasons. Everywhere I go across the oceans and I've looked hours out the window, it's just all just to present itself flat. We can't see any curvature unless we go really, really high up into the Earth. So my flat Earth proofs are globe inconsistencies. My inconsistencies with the globe are my proof for the flat Earth. That is my proof.
So this is. That's fine, and this is where I'm going with it. Like everything you've just said there, I mean, we could go on and talk about it, but everything you said there, I can quite happily, explain, take you to scientific papers. I can show you flight times. We can do all of that.
Yeah.
And I could quite happily articulate that to you.
Yeah.
And we could have a conversation because there's something to have what I'm getting at is when we talk about the flat Earth, there is nothing or anything to talk about.
I agree with you that I have got
nothing
no
to
proof.
talk about.
I agree with you. I've got no proof for flat Earth. I concede that. And I don't mind conceding points.
The big one to concede, but there is no, and that to me is why the flat Earth model, the flat Earth kind of movement gets a little bit dangerous because I understand when I was showing you the Opvos effect before. If you've never seen that before, it's going to take a little bit of a while to digest, isn't it? It's going to take a little bit of a while to take in and understand, unless you're working in physics. When I was talking to you about the grey satellite, you probably want to go and look at those papers. You're going to want to read them. If I was to tell you about how Polaris was evidence for a globe, etc., you're going to want to sit and think about the angles and do the trigonometry yourself. So it takes time. You know what I mean? And I get that. But I think with the flat Earth movement, people who are flat earthers, and every flat earther I've ever debated really, doesn't take the time to learn any of those things at all. They just don't.
You know what I'll do? As a friend, look, as a friend to you, what I'll do is I'll speak to you as a mate, like I've known you for years. And that, not as a combative, but as somebody that.
Yeah, well, I don't think we have been combative.
No, we haven't. No. I get, I understand that it seems like we have no evidence. It's actually ridiculous. I totally get that, but the fact that it is kind of unprovable. I don't think they're using that to escape answering questions. So you can pick out. So, for example, a lot of globers want a model so they can show them, this doesn't work because angular resolution, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That's how your mind works. Your mind works on models, abstract sort of explanations, and that fits it. But flat earthers don't think in that context. Their context is what I experience, what I see, what I see with my own eyes. You get what I mean? So it's not about like explanations. It's about what it is, what it is. You know what I mean?
You've made a very good, honest point, right? A really good, honest point. I'm really glad you've come on tonight, actually, because it's been a nice chat and an honest chat and stuff. That point you made is an honest one. And when you say that like globers and debunkers and stuff are constantly wanting a model, right? The reason is when you get in this debate, like the debate we've had tonight.
Yeah.
If there isn't, you could say, right, I'm going to see if I can attack gas pressure. I'm going to see if I can attack the horizon looking flat. I'm going to see if I can attack this, if I can attack that, and so on. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's like a battleground we can have a debate on. But if there is a debate, when there's literally nothing to attack, because the flat earther will just say, I'm not really a flat earther, I'm just a globe skeptic, so I'm not claiming anything. When there's absolutely nothing to attack, then like when people that do a lot of debates, that can get frustrating for me, you know what I mean? Because there is, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's like someone coming up to you.
It seems like obfuscation. It seems like a get-out clause, and that's what I used to think. I used to go to them. Well, why can't you? Where's your model? I used to scream at them. Where's your model? Where's this? Where's that? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm asking the wrong questions here because these people don't work on models. These people don't work on abstract ideas. That they're on about their experience of life and what they go out and what they see, and they trust in their senses because they feel like they've been lied to their whole life. They feel like the things that we see on TV, the things that apparently are up in the air, all that stuff is a lie to them. So when we try to attack that, that's the wrong thing. The psychology behind it is, go on.
Well, no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just agreeing with you, and I think you're right. The psychology is like, when we set up this channel, like me and Creaky, it was so we could have discussions like this, not so you could say something and I could go, "Oh, you're an idiot." Right? It was, we want to have the discussion, so we can hopefully kind of make it public that.
Yeah. I understand. I totally agree.
Exactly
I concede everything. If I've been honest from the start, which is, I don't have a fully in-depth overview of all these things, and I fully don't understand things. But the certain things that I do understand, and the things that when I do add these things up in my head, there's a bit inconsistencies and the stuff that arouses a lot of doubt, and I guess that's why people revert back to just trusting what they actually see with their own eyes and what they believe, and don't make claims. But they're not making claims because they're trying to avoid questions. They're not making claims because they're just being honest with themselves and what they see. That's what they see, that's what they experience, and that's as far as it goes.
So people can think the Earth is flat then purely based on their own misunderstanding of reality, Tom.
That's one way to look at it, but that's what you always get. You don't understand. You're obviously getting it wrong, and that's why I used to attack them from that same position. They obviously got it wrong, but Have they? You know, we have to ask ourselves, do they really have it?
And you said something quite interesting just now. It was interesting to me. God knows whether it'll be to anyone else. But when Catz was talking about something earlier on, you typed in the side chat, he's presupposing a ball. So based on something you've just said, and I'm not saying this specifically, but so you said something along the lines of, you know, people end up believing the Earth is flat because it's their reality. Well, somebody claiming their reality is basically, as we all know, somebody saying, I don't care what's true and what isn't true. If it's my reality, it's fine, and nobody can dispute it. And also you said something about if they're lying about A, then B must be true. So is the Earth flat because you've been lied to about other things? So you're presupposing it's a lie that the Earth is a globe because other things you've been lied to about.
Yeah,
I think
that's exactly
does that make sense, mate?
That's 100% jackpot. Because, like I said at the start, the reason that started me off was looking at the sun and the moon and thinking, well, they look the same size. And the only reason I don't believe they're the same size is because of trigonometry and explanations and abstract explanations. And that's what's led me to think, you know what? If I actually look at the world for myself, like, they are the same size. They might be slightly different. They might vary slightly because of atmospheric conditions and, you know, the fact that the moon's an elliptical course and blah, 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 blah. I've been studying science since I was 12. You know, I'm coming on 35 now. Do you know what I mean? I've been thinking about the world and what it is and all that. And I'm thinking this is a possibility that this is a possibility. And I think that most globers or people that believe in the globe wholeheartedly, they don't even consider that. And when they attack flat earthers, they don't even consider that the fact that there could be wrong. And even as drastic and as ridiculous as it sounds, of all the people in the world getting it wrong, which just seems extremely unlikely, I see a possibility for that. And that's.
I think it seems to me like you're taking this more of a philosophical viewpoint than a scientific one. Would that be fair?
Yeah, if you like, if you want to categorize results, it's not a demonizing way, because that's what I seem to get when I try to share my views or share my opinion. I get attacked for just, you know, being you know, that's what I mean. I was in Gen Panda server. I used to get on with everybody in there. We used to have a good time, like, you know, flat smacking people and whatnot. And, you know, but as soon as I started to question things, it soon turned to the snake pit, and they all turned on me and just character assassinated me, and, you know, attacking the fact that I didn't know what I was talking about, and, you know, and it's you know what. If science actually wants critique, then it should welcome critique with both arms, because if it's true, there's nothing to hide, is there?
I agree with that, but the thing is, the scientific community keeps itself in check. You know, the scientific community is a highly competitive, you know, industry. Universities fork out a lot of money, you know, for the research to be taken place, and they want the rewards from that. You know, they want to be the first ones to discover this, the first, you know, and if something out there is wrong, scientific community, it's not public, you know, it's a privatized industry, if you like, it debunks itself, it's competitive. So what I would say, and my kind of closing thought really, is that from everything you said, right, it seems to me that your issues are you don't understand, or not, you can't comport some parts of the heliocentric model and make it make sense in your mind. Okay, so what I would say too is that's fine, because lots of things are complicated, but what I would say is, if you really went away and looked at what the science was, educated yourself about things like the Optos effect, educate yourself, you know, about astronomical sciences and the predictions we can make, then from that place, you can make an educated conclusion. Do you know what I mean? You can't make an educated conclusion about gravity if you don't know anything about it, or gas pressure if you don't know the difference between pressure and pressurized.
Yeah,
you can once you've learned it.
I guess education for me is it also can seem like indoctrination. It's like, if you don't pass the test, it's because you don't understand it. Well, you have to keep going back until you give them the answers they want. And I know that you're saying it's education, but it's kind of like, I don't know. Maybe Christopher Columbus, when he had his little telescope and he used to look at boats going over the horizon. That was his horizon from his viewing angle, and that's what he saw. And then obviously everyone else saw that, and then that became, you know, what the consensus thought. And then the consensus obviously had a head start in thinking that boats were disappearing over the horizon. Now the common consumer has better equipment to see that we have a horizon that you can see, and then a horizon you can zoom past, and it will give you a new horizon, and then you'll get that effect again. And I feel like that's something that could have been like a domino effect in history, and that's led us all to believe in what it is. And then, basically, I'm not 100% sure. This world is came before us; it's going to be here long gone after I'm gone. But I do understand I do understand the concepts. I've been arguing them, and people will say you didn't understand them quite enough. I do understand what they're saying with the moon, for example. It's going further away from us, but it's not coming closer. Mass attracts mass. The moon has gravity, we have gravity, but it's not attracting because the moon's going further away. But the reason it's going further away is because of reasons like, it's gaining speed around it's spinning speed around the Earth, and it's basically creating torque, and then it's just winning that little battle between the two forces. And then you've got like the sun, and it's summer because it's a bit of a tilt. But I think about how big the sun is, and I think about the heat that it's radiating off, and then as soon as it hits the Earth, all of a sudden it becomes this distribution because of the angle it's hitting us at. And I'm thinking to myself, I understand what you're saying, but when I think about it independently, from what education teaches me, I still think that doesn't make sense. So, when I actually think critically, and I don't think a lot of globers out there are critically thinking about what is accepted just because the consensus is it's true.
Well, that point, I mean, when I come into this whole kind of scene on YouTube, there were a lot of arguments that flat earthers were presenting, like that whole ridiculous angle of attack stuff, or that Nathan. And then you think, and what's he talking about there? And then you do. It does make you look into new stuff, and you're right. Just in the same way that I wouldn't sit at home and look at French literature, right? There's a lot of people out there that don't have a will in that wouldn't sit and look at the science that proves the globe. You know what I mean? Yeah. You look into what's relevant to your life. But the fact is, there are millions of people out there in the industries that rely on the Earth being a globe, millions. And then when you do start looking into the science around certain things, it's very difficult to find flaws. I know you're saying, this confuses me, that confuses me, or whatever. But there are no flaws, there are no contradictions at all. Yeah. I mean, I know you've talked about gas pressure, but there's no flaw or contradiction at all. And if you were to get to the indoctrination bit you were talking about, no one's saying you've got to go back to school and college and have someone stood in front of you. You've got scientific papers you can look up where people are correcting each other. You can see what they've done. You can raise questions about it. You can look at different sources on the same topics on the internet. Do they agree? Do they disagree? None of those are being paid to indoctrinate you. You can have a look in that yourself.
It's very true, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I think that you are right. I might need to get further at grasp on things, and I will continue to further educate myself. And this is why I haven't fully let go of the globe, because there is a lot of stuff to consider and a lot of stuff to weigh up, and I have got a limited. I'm aware I have got a level of ignorance, and I'm aware that I don't know everything, but I also look at my common sense, and I think that this is something I shouldn't ignore either. So I'm in a battle. I'm in a transition at the moment, and that's pretty much why I feel like I got the opportunity to come and speak to you today. And it's been a very, it's therapeutic. It's been very, it's been the best sort of debate form that we should have. Two people sharing their views, an educated man, versus basically somebody who thinks he knows better than some of the educated people in the world, which I understand.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, just saying that's what we're here for. We don't do shouting, screaming, anything like that. So you've played your part in that. So thank you.
Well, the reason I bring their arguments from the people that you mentioned earlier is because these people do shout and scream a lot. And for myself, that I look past, rather as a truth seeker, I look past people that are quite assertive or aggressive or unfair in certain aspects. And I just try to learn what's true and what's not. So taking even the most ridiculous, what seems to be, as a Glober, when I was a Glober, the most ridiculous argument, I would consider it still because I'm not closed-minded. But like you said there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I think that's something that, that you're confident in your position, you're educated in your position, so you have no doubts. But like personally myself, I feel like I'd never close my mind to that point where I'd be absolute, because that to me I think is dangerous, because that means that even when things do contradict you, would you actually see it? Would you actually would you actually honestly see these problems?
Could I just jump in, guys?
Yeah, of course you can.
Sorry, Catz. It's 9:00. We've got tons of questions, and I've got one question before we do that, if that's okay.
Anything, mate? Anything you want to do?
Yeah. So, you say you're what was it? You said 80% of flat earther, 20% of you is still a globe earther. So so there must be certain points, certain sticking points for you then.
Yeah. Yeah, mainly because respect for people that have dedicated their whole life to their craft, such as, you know, Catz, for example, as a physics teacher. I think that's an amazing achievement, which needs to be respected. People that have, for example, if somebody came to me and started telling me about my boxing and they've never boxed a day in their life, it's the most hypocritical thing you can hear. You think to yourself, I've studied years on this thing. I know, and you're coming in as a casual and trying to tell me about complicated moves and strategies and combats, and I think to myself, this is so ignorant of this person. They haven't got a clue, and I understand that mindset of having a vast knowledge. So I don't want to undermine some of the greatest minds out there. I want to give everyone equal respect, and same with the flat earthers. I don't want to just look at them as crazy people. These are people with, you know, maybe superstitious or conspiratorial, but I feel like everybody is entitled to do science. I don't think we should just say only if you've got a white coat and a degree you should be able to have a valid opinion also. So I take on board stuff that probably a lot of people wouldn't do.
So what I was trying to get at is there sort of one or two things in particular that you know specifically that is holding you back from going full?
When I was on holiday, I watched the sunset, and I saw the sun's light when it was below the horizon create shadows on the bottom of clouds, and I looked at that and I thought, well, that can't work geometrically if the Earth's flat. It must be going below the horizon, and it must be doing this. And I just that was one of my concrete beliefs. Because visually I experienced it, and I felt like, you know, that to me is quite. I argued that point till I was blue in the face. How can you have shadows on the bottom of clouds? That's geometrically impossible. But you know, the same reflection and other factors, and maybe light bending. I mean, I'm just what I'm going to do is just study more. I'm not biasly on either side, and just take both. Because if the flat earthers are right, then if they're wrong, they're going to be wrong. You know, the truth will take you to where the truth is. You know what I mean? The truth will take you to...
Obviously, I don't think you've seen any of my videos because you're being far too nice to me, so you clearly haven't. But you know, I've said in my videos, if the situation ever arose and it turned, let's say for argument's sake now, with something ridiculous, it turns out that the Earth actually is flat, I'll happily say, okay, the Earth is flat because it has now been proven to us. But, you know, you are sort of sitting, you're playing both sides, it seems. You're erring on the side of caution. You seem to be... You, like I say, you're obviously influenced by Nathan Oakley, Anthony Riley. Even I can hear that, and I noticed that you pointed out how educated Catz was and completely missed me out. But
I'm sorry, I've never seen you before. I'm not familiar with this.
I am winding you up. I am winding you up. But you know, so. The fact that you seem to be playing both sides. You seem to be enjoying the flat Earth community, but you're not ready to commit.
Commitment would be actually to divulge. Like, would be closing my mind completely. I mean, I see things in reality that you know, like the geometric horizon. I looked at the calculator. I've looked at the reasons, and there's always a reason that I don't understand with the globe. And so sometimes you just have to look back at what you can actually see with your own eyes and start to, you know, what if you're actually, for example, here's an analogy, a little story. I don't know how long we got, but a quick story. Right, this is how I see it. Like, let's imagine you're a 25-year-old male who doesn't know anything about the world, never been told anything. You go outside, I'll take you down to the beach. I go, yeah, mate, look down the beach. You go, oh yeah, it looks flat. And I go, all right, let's go in a plane. We fly over like 10 miles of of water. You look down, you go, oh yeah, it looks all flat. We get off on the other side, and I go, do you realise you just went over a curve? And he'll go, oh no, I never. I'll go, look at this board. I draw something on the board. I explain how, you know, he doesn't see this, he doesn't see that. And he goes, yeah, there, look, now you're on a ball. And he goes, yeah, I'm on a ball. He goes home, right? He walks in, he catches me on top of his wife. I jump off and I go, no, it ain't what you see, Let me get this board out. And I get the board and I start drawing like a little graph on the board. And go, look, you see, it weren't me. Do you know what I mean? That's an analogy of kind of like how I feel. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, like I say, we've got loads of questions. So as the scary old woman says at the end of Poltergeist, don't go into the light, Tom. We will save you. And or we'll try to anyway, and we will. Should we shoot through some of the questions, Catz? Or have you got anything? Yeah. Let's have a quick look at the super.
I was going to say, yeah, you can.
Super chatted questions first. Let's see if there are any, or if they just Looking forward to why anybody can understand flat earth arguments. So most of them seem to be just statements. Right, so Ayash, sorry if not sorry if I butchered it. I have butchered your name, for which I apologize. Question for Brooomie. Entropy is a calculation. Is it a calculation of the number of microstates versus macro states? Why do you trust entropy but not Boltzmann constant?
But it's a calculation. The Boltzmann constant is a calculation of things that's basically the definition of it, really. You're getting other stuff and you're calculating the probability. And even though it's quite accurate, like Catz was saying, but it's still kind of an estimation, I guess.
But the question started off saying entropy. I don't know enough about this to know whether this question is even right or wrong, and I'm happy to say that to you. It says entropy is a calculation, Kat. So entropy is a calculation.
That's my answer.
Well as... I mean, they both are essentially they're both statistical probabilities of what's going to happen. It is possible that we might get like a decrease in entropy just naturally without having to put any effort into it rather than an increase, but that statistical probability is so small and factored into all that maths, you're going to find the Boltzmann equation. You can't separate the two, and this is what I was saying before, Broomy, that and I was going to ask you about, if you come back in a few weeks and you've looked at all of this stuff and you understand it, we could have, we could see where you are on your journey then and stuff, but it's a brilliant point. You can't trust one without the other. You just can't, and you won't see the significance of that until you know what they both are. Anyway, sorry, back to you, Creaky.
Then we have, why is Catz avoiding the question? How do you get the pressure first?
How do you get the pressure first? Well, there's no need at all for a container to get gas pressure. It's like, how do you get the gas pressure? You have the gas pressure by having gas there. The particles bounce off something, like my hand, all right? And my hand, therefore, feels the pressure. If they don't bounce off anything, they bounce off each other, all right? If I put something in that space, I'm going to measure the pressure. You don't need a container, you need the gas. And again, whoever's asked that, I'm assuming it's a flat earther, whoever has asked that is obviously, asked that before we address the difference between pressure and pressurized. But, it's a non-question. Why do you need a container to have gas? Or are you suggesting that for gas to exist, we have to create a container first, and then once we create a container, gas particles are allowed to exist? Does it make any sense?
Another question from the person whose name I just butchered. Please describe to him a vacuum chamber with a centrifuge in it. It's the easiest way to demonstrate gas pressure without the vacuum.
Is that for me?
I assume it's for Catz.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So I think what you're saying is if you've got I mean, I've never seen, I'll be honest, like a gas centrifuge in a vacuum, but the idea would be that, you'd artificially create sort of the gravitational force, if you like, if you've got a centrifuge in a vacuum, and you would see like a gas pressure gradient inside that centrifuge tube inside a vacuum. If that makes sense. But
the rest of the super chats are basically just either statements or just support for the channel. So do we want to jump into the community tab, Catz, and ask a couple from there before we call it done?
Yeah, and then we'll read the other ones at the end. Do the super chats at the end.
Yeah, we'll read the other super chats at the end.
So I am not on our community tab. Are you okay with the questions?
I tell you what, I'll zip through the super chat. So Brainless Steel NL, €2. Thank you, pal. Eric Hare, $5 US. Looking forward to understanding how anybody can buy into flat earth arguments. Chris Shapley is busy at work, so $10 and he'll catch it on replay. Kit, get them Broomy, I mean. He said Brummy, which you clearly are. It's funny because you remind me of a guy I used to work with who was known as Dudley Dave.
Dudley Dave.
Yeah.
Yum yums. What yum saying? You're right, lad.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's almost as if he's in the room with me. Why is Catz avoiding the question? Right, we've just asked that one. Entry basic calculation. Tommy Gronvald, there's lots you can do to find curvature with both feet on the ground. Why debate something you can't do anything about over and over again? Neil Sullivan says, cheers both, £5. Keep up the good work. Stringer News 1, don't try to explain brain surgery to a simpleton. They might see it as permission to try it on themselves. Fight the Flat Earth and Team Skeptic have a video on that. I'm not sure what that's referring to, JL Warren, because the context is gone now. Only sheep can't see. Is that a Welsh joke? It's a bit rude. Invisible wall that some people have somehow seen. Stringer News 1 again. For the last time, gravity may not be a force, but the force of gravity is a force. Just like a jet isn't an engine, but a jet engine is an engine.
Okay.
The only way to critique science is through better science. Why can't flat earthers differentiate between something moving down and something moving away when viewing a sunset? And Jessica G says, I just want to hear Creaky say, craving more dick. There we are. I've said it. Oh, dear me. Right. And over to the questions, Catz.
Okay, questions. Sorry, while I was listening to those, while you did that, I should have been looking for the questions, shouldn't I? Right, so here we go. And I'm assuming they're almost all going to be for you, Broomy, but yeah, I've got quite a lot. So let's get right down. Right, you know what? Can we give like 20, 30-second answers if possible? Because there's a lot here. Is that okay? Go. Right.
Well, I'm still what do you want?
No, we've got some questions for you from the chat.
Shit. Here we go.
Okay, so Ayush Deshmukh, I pronounced that wrong, sorry, has talked about the bucket thing. That wasn't a question, sorry, it was a good comment, but I'm going to have to move on because I haven't got many. Okay, Mike Blank says, when you go from sea level to 10,000 feet, the pressure goes from 14 psi to 10 psi. What happens if we continue away from the Earth? Will the pressure drop until you reach zero? That's for you, Broomy. So basically, if you keep going up the pressure gradient, will it eventually get to zero?
Well, from when I think about it in a dome, in a flat Earth, then basically it would, I don't know, it will just keep going. It will keep decreasing because it makes sense that it slowly evaporates because it's contained, so it's not trying to escape. And then obviously when it reaches the top, it will just bounce off and come back down again. Because obviously, a gas molecule's in motion by Newton's law that they will stay in motion until acted on by a force, or obviously resistance by the dome. So it'll just bounce off and come back down again, and that creates a recycle. And obviously, when it's cold, it stops the energy from like exciting the particles and going up, so it kind of settles down, and every day and night kind of keeps causing the same things. So that's on that cycle.
Excellent. My answer to that one would be obviously, there's nothing to suggest if we keep going up, the pressure gradient won't eventually hit zero, which means we haven't got pressurized gas next to the vacuum of space. Also, as we go through the layers of the atmosphere, we go through the layers that are more dense and get to the ones that are less dense, what you'll find is those gas particles that are heading in the right direction to escape are going to collide more and lose energy because there's more collisions to be had. So they tend to kind of almost rein themselves and check. There's very few that manage to build up enough kinetic energy through all the collisions to get to that high level. Okay, Rory McAllister, I can't read the whole thing out, I haven't got a lot of time, but it makes a very good analogy. Would you expect an amoeba to be able to perceive the curve on a soccer ball if it was on it?
I'm not sure what he's asking. Could you?
Well, an amoeba is something extremely small, right? You put it on a soccer. Basically, we are like an amoeba. We are tiny compared to the shape of the Earth. Do you expect that we should see curve?
Oh yeah, like my argument for flat earthers used to be, if you was a grain of salt on a gigantic air balloon, probably the size of a football field, would you expect to see curvature? If you was 6 foot, would be like the grain of salt on that, and the answer would be no. So I understand the idea that I probably shouldn't expect to see it when I'm saying it, but when we look at the geometric horizon, and we look, we see in objects that we see in distances we shouldn't see, and we're told, the only reason you're seeing that is because of the atmospheric conditions of that it's refracting the whole horizon up to a level. Then I'm thinking, well, I'm still seeing it when I shouldn't see it. Do you know what I mean? So that's what my senses are telling me. So when I use the actual Earth calculator,
well, maybe next time you're on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Well, maybe next time you're on, you can bring some of those observations that you're talking about, and we can look at those. Sorry to cut you off. We're just going to fly through these. Wolfgang says, you don't need to be a flat earther to get a community around you. You are worthy as a human, even though you don't understand everything about the globe. You don't have to be a flat earther to feel good about yourself. I think that was meant in a nice way. Fred Bailey says, can you explain a spiral galaxy?
Can I explain a spiral galaxy?
I'm going to assume you're not much into the astronomy.
I saw like the behavior of in the geocentric model. There's like the planets all go spiraling around us, rather than in a heliocentric model. Everything goes around us in like kind of a uniform way. But the spiraliness does make more sense in a geocentric model. So the stars and all that do behave like spiraling, which is more consistent with like harmonic sort of world. I'd explain it like in a nutshell. I'm trying to pick answer.
No, you're right. I think he meant he wasn't talking about like star trails, but it's but don't worry about it. If you're not into astronomy, you probably would never have looked at one through a telescope and stuff. But it is different to the star trails, right? Archivist 17 asked a good question. I suppose it's a yes or no, really. But do you accept that the earth pressure on top of a mountain is demonstrably and significantly lower than at sea level?
Yes, but that's the point. We still have pressure. Without the air pressure, or how do we have it in the first place? Like that's the question. We understand that there's definitely differential.
My answer to that would be all you need for pressure is gas particles, because that they are what cause the pressure. Nobody says that you have to build a container and then gas particles can be created to go in. That would be my answer to that. Craven Mordick says, holy word salad Batman. Yeah, it's a great name, isn't it? I'm just... Okay. No Name has asked a question. I think we touched on this at the very beginning, but do you believe in the void of outer space? And if you don't believe in the void of outer space, and this is a very good question, actually, if you don't believe in the void of outer space, why do we need a container?
That's a good question. Yeah.
It is a good question. Well,
the only reason
No Name.
The only reason I believe
that's a hell of a question. Why did I think of that?
The only reason I think we need a container is because of the gas pressure. But if it is contained, that means that that if this is it shows a significant sign for intelligent design, and that this world was built for us to live in harmony with each other. So what's outside of it is yet there's a lot more mysteries in Flat Earth, because if we have been lied to, then that's where we need to discover these things, and that's why it's interesting to actually go up there myself. I'd love to go up there myself, which I never will.
One more. And then I've just realised I'm hogging all these, and I'll let Creaky choose the last ones. This is from Brainless Steel and Brooomie. How accurate do you think human senses are? Do you think we can see and feel as good as the tools that man has made?
I totally concede that point. If I was getting a bricklayer to build me a wall, and he was going, "Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna eyeball it," I'd have more confidence if he used tools to adjust that. And so I understand that your question basically saying, well, obviously you're going to get things wrong when you're just trying to judge the horizon with your eyes and using your own senses. I too agree, but they still should not be ignored.
Go on, Creaky, I'll let you.
Why is everybody going to have... What happened to everybody called John or Steve? The stupid Twister, the Twister, I think, maybe, possibly. Broomy, can... well, this is probably not the best question for somebody who's 80% flat earther, but does the Himawari 8 show a dome or a flat earth?
Himawari 8? What's that? Oh, is that the telescope?
The satellite that's...
Oh, yeah. No, that's that Chinese one that they show the whole globe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that looks like CGI to me, like, to be honest. I know it sounds like a typical answer, but if you look at it, it literally is graphics, isn't it? Like, it literally is graphics. Literally, like... And you can look at that any time of day and every time of day you want, but yeah, it just looks a bit... look at this... look at this picture. Look, that's where you live. Look, like it's just CGI.
CGI.
Okay, are we off there, Creaky?
No. Why you are?
Right.
You Cat?
Sorry. No.
Yeah, no, we're still on.
No, I had it paused on the. I had it paused on
Right.
the standby screen on the watch page. Just had a look at it.
Right, okay. Sorry, I'm getting totally distracted now. Broomy, how much does Quantum Eraser and Nathan charge you to use their argument?
To be honest with you, I hated them. I never liked them. They spoke to me. They've publicly humiliated me on multiple occasions. But as you know, you have to forget about the person who's giving you these arguments in such an unforgiving way. All I'm interested in the truth. So I've looked past that. They're actually decent people, and it's easily get frustrated and shouting at people when they don't listen. They are trying to teach stuff. They are trying to bring you to a different way of thinking, and people, often Globers, don't look past that. They just hear screaming and shouting, but they don't actually address the arguments. Which is why in here we are addressing the arguments. We've uncovered the fallaciousness within me and the certain things on the other side that it's there for everyone to see. You know what I mean? So maybe it's not the best format, but I listen to everybody. I don't disregard people because they shout and scream.
My take would be, if that question is to both of us, my take would be, the opposite to that. I think Nathan Oak is like a YouTube career person, and he will always constantly fail to get to the root of an argument. If something is mentioned and he doesn't understand it, he will try the little tricks of, well, let's talk about a definition of this word instead, or I'll start screaming. And it's very, very easy to do. It's very easy to derail the conversation, especially when you've got the mute button. Creek, I think some more super chats have just come in.
Right, okie dokie.
He's gone. Oh no, is there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Pentalica is asking $5 US, by the way. If space is fake, then where does the Earth exist?
If space is fake, then if these rockets are going up, they tell you they curve because they're trying to get into orbit and they're trying to go over the curve, etc. That's why they curve in these pictures or these observations that you see when you see rockets take off. Now, none of us can confirm that. We just have to go on faith and trust in the people. And it could be going over a curve, or it could just be trying not to hit the dome and just going out of view and then just ending up somewhere else where nobody can see them in the middle of the ocean somewhere. We can't confirm that.
Yeah, but why? Where is Earth if space is fake? Because that wasn't the answer to the question.
There must be a dome above us. Like it just ends there, and what's out there is a mystery, and we would like to explore that.
Okay, cool. $3.99 Australian super sticker from Banana Peaches. Thank you very much. I wish I had a better memory. So we got 20 knockers from Tony Gromwald. Should you need some curvature, I've got it covered. Well, that's a statement, not a question. Sorry. Another super chat coming in is a statement again. You say something complicated is causing the gradient. It stops gases from mixing. Why can't the same thing stop gas from mixing with vacuum?
What? Is that for me?
I got no. Let me read it again.
I think the dome would stop it from mixing in the vacuum. If there was a space outside the dome, the dome would be the reason why it stops it. It'd bounce back off. It would stop the molecules in motion, and it would just come back down. That makes sense.
I'm almost afraid to ask this, Tom, but if space doesn't exist, where is the moon and sun?
That's a good question. The moon looks about as far away as the sun does to me. Is it 250,000 miles away, like they say the moon, and the sun is sorry about the swearing, 93 million miles away. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Like 93 million miles away. Like come on. I mean, this is what I hate about the evolutionary argument. When they add millions and millions of years, anything's possible. Millions and millions.
Okay, B-ball for life. Question for Broomy.
We could have a debate on evolution.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're an evolution denier as well, Tom.
Well, I wasn't until now. I'm questioning everything now. And when I think about if you heard my song and stuff, I thought you probably heard that. I've got like a flat Earth song, and I talk about evolution in that as well. Because now I'm questioning everything. I'm actually questioning why do I actually believe that in Jurassic times our ancestor was an actual Jurassic rat. if you follow back the bloodline, we was like the rats in your sewers today could evolve into being complex human beings in billions of years. And I just find it a bit ridiculous. I know that there's a lot of evidence to suggest it, but when you actually think about what they're saying to you, I think it's worth questioning.
Right, sorry. B-Ball for Life's question was, Broomy, can you tell the difference between something moving down and something moving away when viewing a sunset?
I mean, like, this is one of the hooks that keeps me back into the globe Earth, is because I've witnessed the sun go below the horizon, which causes shadow on the bottom of clouds, and that gives me like a geometric kind of a leveling of saying that that's below the horizon. If it's below the horizon, it can't be flat. So I can by following the sun's light and the way it casts shadows, I triangulate it below the horizon. So I kind of feel like it's going down. You know what I mean? But way that things converge and optical illusions that you can experience in reality by looking at stuff, I ain't certain.
Right, $9.99 US from JL Warren. If you plot out the known distance between cities as given by the postal services onto a 3D graph, why do those plot points, when the values are kept true, form a sphere?
Because you can reverse anything when it comes to maths. Maths is like abstract. It's a way of making things that you could make things that don't make sense in the reality with the right formulas. You can reverse engineer anything you like. So, I mean,
hang on. So maths is so. If you wanted to manipulate it, you could make 5 + 5 = 12.
Well, you use formulas, don't you? And the values in them formulas can be edited. You can change formulas around, and they're not. It's not as simple as 5 + 5.
5 + 5 is always going to be 10, no matter how you manipulate it.
Yeah, but you're not doing 5 + 5s, are you? You're doing the.
Yeah, but no, I'm using that as a simple example because it doesn't matter.
But they don't do simple maths, do they? They do
no, that's a fair point, actually. £4.99 from Ben Smith.
Can I just add one thing to that question, just very quickly?
Of course you can. Sorry, Kat. I'm being a question hog.
But sorry, just very quickly. Just one thing to the question you asked. Like, maths can be used to prove anything. I mean, flat earthers say that a lot. They say maths can be used to make anything about the globe work. I mean, if that was true, because it would prove anything, then you'd be able to prove things about the flat Earth works. And nobody has ever done that. So it's not true. Nobody's ever been able to apply master flat. So anyway, sorry, Creaky.
Well, from a quick responses, when I done my diploma in stuff, right, I done formulas and I read the question absolutely incorrect, and I'd done the working out and it matched what I was working out, but it was the question I read was completely different. So my working out was fine and it comported with what I thought was true, but the actual question I answered was wrong. So like I had to redo the exam because I'd done like one of the questions wrong in there, and that's because I didn't read the question properly. Do you know what I mean? So I know that sometimes you can do your working out right, but it won't work out what you're trying to work out.
Hang on, because this sounds exactly like something I would say, because I like to make outlandish excuses as well. Your answer was right. It was the question that was wrong.
I read the question wrong. I did concede that I read the question wrong.
But still came to the correct answer, so therefore the question was wrong, your answer was right.
Yeah, my working out was correct, but because of the information I took into the question was wrong, my working out was still right, but it's still. You get that disconnect I'm trying to make?
Yeah, so the method you used to get to your answer was correct, but because you misread the question, you then had the wrong answer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Got you. I'm very easily confused, Tom. Right. Last question. Last super chat. Last question of the night. Broomy, you admit you don't have a good understanding of science, but you want to make scientific arguments. Please tell me how that can make sense.
Because I'm the sort of person who gets the gist of things. I get the idea, and I guess that, like, in science, they use it, very convoluted, and they use a different sort of language. That they use. They measure units differently. They have different names for all different things. But the contents of what they're saying, really, it's still. You can still work out what they're trying to say. I mean, this, like Catz has explained what, the difference between things, and we can have the conversation. We can trade information back and forth. That's one of the beautiful things about the English language. So, I mean, as long as I get the gist or I get the idea that someone's trying to portray, then I could, even without the full extent of all this knowledge, I can still make common sense out of it. This is what science is doing. It's making sense of the reality we live in. So just by critiquing someone because they haven't. No one is going to be an expert in all fields. There is not one man in the world that can be an expert in every single discipline. But we all have to learn bits from each other and come to a conclusion. At some point, we're going to lack certain experience in other places, but that don't mean the person who's doing that in between in between sciences shouldn't be heard or shouldn't be taken into account. That's my answer.
Right, we got one more question. I know I said that was the last one, but I've skipped over one. Sorry, Call of the Void. If your reality is based on your sight and senses, Broomy, do you believe magic is real when you watch a magician?
Well, that's the point. That this is the whole world could be doing a magic trick on you, and you know you need to look between the lines and never be too sure in what you see, because what you see and what you're taught is it could be just magic. I look at these abstract examples of things they're not demonstrations of reality, and that's what I'm interested in.
And another one has just come in. 99-cent super sticker from Only Sheeple Can't See, and $5 US from Stringer One News. I've heard nothing that moves me even slightly towards flat Earth, but I am convinced to never shop for a used car. I'm not entirely sure I understand that, but perhaps one of you can make some sense of it.
Are you a used car salesman? Is that what he's getting at, or
possibly? I did get that kind of sense, but I didn't want to be 100% sure. But we're not here to convince you. I mean, I've only been invited because of the fact that I'm known within the community, and I've made a transition recently, and I'm an honest person. I'm outspoken, and I do have a general understanding of a lot of things. So I feel like I could, it's been a good chat today. It's been quite good. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just telling you my experience as an individual.
You know what? To have somebody on to talk about flat Earth where we haven't had to, set like a time limit so we don't talk over each other time. We've managed to do 2.5 hours there nearly, where we've had a proper chat. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate that. I respect that massively, because I can't think of many flat earthers that I'll be able to get away with just having a proper conversation with. So well done with that. But honestly, we'll invite you back. Look at a few more things. If you come back in maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, and then tell us if you've gone 100% flat Earth, if you've gone the other way, you let us know, and it'd be interesting to have a chat.
A lot more time to mature, and hence why I didn't jump on it last week, because I did feel like it was very, very fresh then. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having us here, and I hope that I could be more of a translator for both sides. I mean, that's been quite, where I feel like, because I'm at, I do listen to both sides thoroughly, and why I brought other people's arguments is probably not the right thing to do, but also it is kind of the voice of what is not being heard, and I've been listening to it, and I'm thinking there is some points in there that do make sense to me, and hence why I brought them to the table.
Right, well, come back in if you've got our email, and an open door. Come back when you fancy.
100%.
And,
thank you so much for having
do
us
it again.
Wicked. Keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, you too.
We will,
I'll leave you to it. Then I'll leave you to it, boys.
Yeah, no, we're just gonna kill the stream. But some childish article wants one more craving more dick from me. But I'm gonna request that user changes their name to I'm not craving any dick, because people are gonna start talking. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you're not subscribed, hit the button now, and we will see you next Wednesday. Cheers, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.